I am live. I hope so. If I was dead, it would be really bummer. Okay, folks. We're doing our usual get on the internet a little bit early and make sure everything's working. So, first of all, sound check. Anyone got information on the sound?
Is anyone here?
There's 3, 5, it's 6. It's showing it. Of course, nobody's comments are showing up because there's like a 30-second delay for some god-awful reason. Loud and clear, sounds good. Lars, okay. Alrighty, okay, so evidently I've got the proper microphone selected. Yay! By the way, Jim is not going to be here tonight. For some reason, he thought negotiating with bigwigs over a property for, as he said, I said, well, maybe you could get a deal done really quick. And he said, yeah, my partner said, yeah, just offer us an obscene amount of money and we'll sign right away. But anyhow, he's busy doing important stuff right now. So we'll let him do his important stuff. I agree completely. And we'll get on to other things. Chris, did you look at that movie I sent you the link to, and what did you think of that? And do you think the scenery was CG or partial CG or what? Oh dear, David, you're scaring me now.
What?
David says, you're as handsome as ever, Keith. I'm not sure what that means. It could be as ugly as ever, too.
That probably means he's drunk.
Hey, yeah, I thought the scene was good. Do you think that was computer generated? Because those are some unusual geology. So those big, wide outflow plains beneath the big towering mountains. I didn't have time, Chris. I'm busy. That was some awesome scenery, though, folks. I don't know if you remember the name of that, Chris. If you want to, go ahead and post it. But it was kind of a comedy spoof of a non-player character, like a World of Warcraft game where you were in the game, but it was all live actors and real scenery and stuff like that. And
the NPC was great.
Yeah. And it was hilarious. It was well acted. It was a great script, and the scenery was truly awesome. Balin's Path. Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, that was Balin's Path. It had NPC in the title. But yeah, it was hilarious. I just enjoyed the heck of it. I've never seen any format like that. And I thought it was extremely well done. I like it with, morning, nice day for fishing. Yep.
I loved it when he killed that boss. It was morning.
Yeah, it was. I like it when somebody goes around a corner and does something differently, and it turns out well. That was well done. Oh, so we got 8 people up. We got our. It's just about startup time here. Everything seems to be working well, except of course. My buddy is gone, so I can't.
And I could totally empathize with the guy who accidentally sold the wrong item in the market. I have done that.
That was actually a different video, but yeah. So I was kind of hoping he'd have a whiteboard here for me to use, but he didn't, so I'm not. I'll make do as best I can. I've had to do it before. I'm pretty sure I can do it again.
You may remember.
Yeah. There's something about paper and a pen or something. David says, you sound beautiful also. That's David Villa there.
Thank you.
Anyhow.
I tried. I don't have a tinfoil hat report yet. I'll come up with something.
Anyhow, for this week, we got some assays back from our last trip up to the mine. We got some more results back from leaching, and everything is looking fairly well. There was one assay that It was from the middle dump that it was substantially lower than I expected. So now I've got a question as to what is that dump running, and I'll have to do some more investigation to figure it out, find out, is it kind of a low-grade ore that's cheap and easy to get to, or is it kind of marginal where it's not even going to be really profitable by the time you go through the entire process. So I say we shall see what we shall see. 17, yeah, we got quite a few people here. Hey, Terry, how's it going? Jim is not here. He was detained doing what he says are important negotiations with people with money.
So hopefully he'll have some great news next time we see him.
Yeah, Lars, that's a misspelling, though. Yep, that's it. Yep, that's the one I'm talking about, Justin. I thought that was, I'd never seen anything like that at all. And
Bear is culturally deprived.
it was very well executed, I thought. And that was, as I say, it was just quite a pleasant surprise. Hey, David, how's it going? So let's see. Currently, what I did last week, we have gotten our 100 pounds of Geo Goldex, so we should have enough. That's right, Lars, that's how you spell it. I mean, for you, not for me. For me, it's the A. For you, it's the E.
Hey, did we get the titration chemicals?
I haven't opened the packages yet. I presume it's in there. There's no reason it shouldn't be. We were kind of busy today, little one, but I have to open those packages to find out. We theoretically have the enough leachant in order to do anything we're going to do this season. We theoretically have the titration reagents sitting in those boxes. And then we also just ordered a power supply. And by next week, I should be doing some electrowinning tests. This week, I did get the cement mixer fixed last week. So this week I need to go out there and prepare the area and the tailings disposal area, which according to my calculations is going to be something like about 10 feet by 15 or 16 feet long or something like that. No, I haven't had a chance to do hardly anything, Chris. Just running around. We got groceries and other stuff.
Laundry.
Yeah, laundry.
I made money.
No, it's Monday evening here at 6 o'clock, David. So anyhow, see, someone just derailed my train of thought. Thank you, Chris. Okay. So I got to get all that prepared so that I can start running the cement mixer size loads, etc. And I'll make a video on how I'm preparing the pad. It's going to be pretty well constructed. I don't want to leave any leaching chemicals, not so much because of the chemicals, because they're pretty harmless, but because it's got gold in it, and that would be a bad thing. Okay. Cool, Terry. Take care, whatever the weather is where you're at. Up here, it's been fairly hot. We were out at the mine on Saturday, and it was hot, absolutely still, and sunny. So, now, right now, it's cloudy. It's breezy. It's cool. It's wonderful weather to work. So that's why I'm on a live stream right now. Now, tomorrow, when I'll be shoveling and raking, yeah, I'm sure it'll be a different story.
It may be raining. It was raining today.
Of course, David. That's what you always do. Every good plan needs a scapegoat. So anyhow, let's get to the actual leaching results first. And this is essentially the same chart you saw yesterday with the new results added. And there we go. Now, this middle curve that you see right here, that's the latest data we got. Now, that was the same material as this curve here, but with two differences. The first difference that made most of the difference as far as I'm concerned is ground much finer. This was 70 mesh minus, this was 20 mesh minus. And that's a big difference in liberation and exposure. I also used sodium hydroxide, lye, caustic soda, whatever you want to call it, to do the pH adjustment to see if the fines would settle better that way. Answer is no, they did not. It was a little easier to adjust the pH, though, because I had a lye solution which I could pipette with high precision. So that's what we got here. As you can see, it was what, 80 what percent? 86.8% after 24 hours. So the upper curve was done through the impact mill, and that's probably how we're going to mill it. And I would expect in the 90% plus recovery after 24, 48 hours. We'll see exactly where we wind up with, but the results are pretty encouraging. Pretty happy with that. Now we move on to larger amounts and to do actual recovery testing. I'm checking to see. It's pretty sketchy right there. It's hard holding that up. Anyhow, so that's the leaching results. And to maintain confidentiality, I have coded this map. These are the three declines at Montana B. Lower decline, middle decline, upper decline. Okay. Now, HG stands for high grade, LG stands for low grade, and M stands for marginal, i.e., it has significant gold in it. I mean, there's nothing here less than 1/10 of an ounce to the ton. Okay. None of those assays are less than 1/10 of an ounce to the ton. If that was the whole mountain, if those were drill holes in a mountain that was fairly homogeneous, it'd be like, oh yeah, there's some ore there. But when you're mining underground, your costs are pretty high. So 1/10 of an ounce per ton is pretty marginal. You'd be lucky if you can actually pay to drive a tunnel through it. I'd say you probably need to get up around 1/4 of an ounce to the ton before you're likely to break even. Now you can see this is the pack rat structure here. This goes this way. And this is pretty well mined out except for certain areas which are, again, pretty much doing ground support duty. So there's, marginal recoverable ore there. Okay. This, on the other hand, this is the middle decline, and that is a vertical structure basically running in the plane of the page. So this is all bottom, and as you can see, this runs basically ore from there all the way down to there. These are 5-foot increments. So that would be 20 feet from surface, 40 feet from surface, 50 feet from surface, and like that. So you got an intercept here of, what is that, 40, a little over 80 feet. 80 feet? No, 40 feet. A little over 40 feet where the bottom is actually running ore. And there's also stuff hanging on the south wall that I'm pretty sure is ore grade. I don't know. Up in this area here, the actual structure as it's mined out looks to be something more like that. And to get up to here would be very difficult to do. This stuff up here, none of it runs really ore grade. So what I'm hoping is this bottom here, which is easy to get to, would be there, would be the stuff we were mining. Now my thought is that we start at the upper limits and just start taking that decline down steeper at say 70 degrees instead of the current 60 degrees. Then we peeling out bottom like a son of a gun. Once we get to this point here, then we have to decide, do we want to put stoles across here, build a platform and try and peel the wall here, things like that. And those are questions that will have to be answered, but that'll probably be next season at the earliest. We shall see what we run into. But that there's a lot of work just doing that right there. So that's our current status right now. The dump outside here, I had a sample that ran 0.66 ounces per ton originally. And the other sample was a lot less than that. The one was a much larger sample of the screenings. I expected that to go over an ounce to the ton, or at least somewhere near an ounce to the ton. And it did not. So we shall see what we shall see when it comes to that. Let's see. The plan at this point in terms of recovery, we're first going to test the efficiency of a direct electrowinning cell. Now, what that means is that you have your pregnant solution, the solution that contains the gold that's been leached out of the rock. We do some solid liquid separation to it, and then we run it through an electroplating cell and plate the gold and silver out of it. Now, the question is, how efficient is that going to be? How much is going to be left in solution afterwards? So how big a cell or length of a long, narrow cell? What do we need to do to get good recoveries? If we can get good recoveries, there's advantages to direct electrowinning. It just makes your whole system a lot simpler. If we can't get that to work well, we may have to go to a resin adsorption circuit in there. The advantage of resin, it's a very simple technology in theory, i.e. you take these little plastic beads, you throw them in your finely crushed ore. As the gold dissolves, the gold goes into the beads, and then you can separate the beads with a screen from the finely crushed ore, and then get the gold out of that. As you can see, adds complexity. At the end of that process, you have an electroplating cell. So if you can do it all at once, it would be nice. Are we going to build our own cell at first? Absolutely. We're going to try a few things and play some games and gain some knowledge.
And we will make videos.
And we will be making videos, yep. But there's two kinds of knowledge. There's theoretical and practical. And the theoretical knowledge, you'd have to be really, really smart and well know all this stuff to figure out what you can do to that solution in detail from pure theory. On the other hand, if you just put it in an electrolytic cell and run some current and stuff, you can play games and figure it out pretty quickly, even if you're fairly ignorant like I am. Okay? I know the basics. Chris is able to handle a lot of the finer details, such as where we should start with the voltage and stuff like that, and get the cell working. I just found out, Chris, the titanium expanded metal should be here on Monday. So my plan basically is to take a container. Oh, this would work. Actually, this would work. Take a container like this and put a divider down the middle that goes almost to the bottom. goes all the way up to the top, above the top, goes almost to the bottom. You hang the anode in one side, cathode in the other. You put the water in it, the solution in at the cathode, theoretically plate out your gold, and then as it comes over here to the anode, you have an outfall, you have a fitting where it goes into your barren container. And this would actually be probably about the right size for the current cell that we're going to doing for testing purposes.
You're just looking for an excuse to buy more peanuts.
Yep. And that may be it. True. Chris knows people that are smarter than him on these things, and he can ask them. So say once we get close, we twiddle with it, kind of like with the Geo Goldex. I asked the manufacturer, he says 11.5. I put it in there, it's causing secondary reactions, so I tweak it down a little bit. And it's like, wow, it works better at 10.5. And then when I get down into the mid 9s, I see things go to crap again. So by just trying it and testing it out, you see what it's like a car. You're adjusting a carburetor, turn the adjustment screw, vroom, vroom, turn it a little more, is it working better? Yeah, better. Well, worse, back it off a little bit. There you go. And I see, Patrick, that Chris has already answered your question, but it says, what kind of power supply? Now, these power supplies are specifically designed for plating. This one takes 110 volts, converts it to steady DC, not pulse DC, unless I'm mistaken here, Chris. I'm pretty sure it's steady DC. And then you can adjust the voltage and amperage to an extent after that. This particular power supply is a little bit fancier than absolutely necessary because it has the capability of being hooked up to computers and doing some fancier stuff later. Yeah, I would think, Chris, we'd be probably running somewhere in the 5 to 6 volt range, roughly. I don't think we're going to be running, anything up even over 10 volts. I'm pretty sure we'd never get up there. And that's the thing, is it needs to deliver a lot of amps at a low voltage. Yeah, Chris, might be less than a volt depending. See what I mean? So we have to have this adjustment, and we have to be able to do it fairly precisely. And there's a scale called, if I'm not mistaken, the electrochemical scale. Every element has a different number. And if your voltage goes up to a certain point, then you're plating everything, I don't know, either below or above it on the scale. Anything one direction on the scale from the number you're plating, you're going to plate out. And the idea is to adjust that so that you get what you want with as little of the crap as you can possibly manage. You want to leave the copper and things like that in solution if possible. And we're likely to run multiple cells. Let's say that one cell, this big, gets 50% of the gold that's in the solution. Well, then you add another cell that big, and it gets another 50%. So now you got 75%. And then you add another cell, and now you're up, and you do that probably like a train of 4 cells. And then once this one's all plated up, take it out of circuit, move everything up, put fresh stuff in the first cell and set it over there and do your thing. Electronegativity, that's it. The electronegativity scale. But anyhow, so there's a lot of complex chemistry here that's really above my pay scale, and it's within reach of Chris there. And since Chris is within reach of me, then I can do this. And I'll be showing you these things. We're coming up with real numbers that you'll be able to see. Also, for those people who saw the video this week on the when do you leach and the slurry density test, how did that work in terms of format? Because I wanted to try and make it interesting for those people who are just doing a quick overview and like that, but also give sufficient detail so that if somebody out there is looking at actually leaching something in the future, they can go through that, look at the formulas, etc., freeze frame it if they have to, and actually do it. Yeah, exactly. That works for me, Chris. It's a little more complex than that, but the details are a bit fun to explain. Yeah. I'll just go with the give me the bottom line. And that's just it, David. I want the David Reed. I want the video to be interesting to everybody, and yet useful to those who actually need the details. So for those of you like you, David, was the video itself interesting enough? Did you find, okay, that's interesting. I'm never going to use it, like you say here, but it kept my interest well enough that I watched it through to the end or whatever. Did that work for you, or is there some improvement you can think of on that? Because that's what I'm trying to do. It's very, very complex to do multiple things at once, but I see no reason not to try. Okay, then I succeeded in what I was trying to do. Because if you had someone else, and I know there's some people watching that are thinking of leaching, they want to know the details, and that way they can do that with you, getting bored. And there you go. Chris Georgie has explained it. Now, anyone can watch Chris's explanation there, can look there and say, yeah, or okay, it's FM, And as Chris points out, slurry density is useful in terms of plaster operating when you're running a jig or a sluice or whatever. There's certain parameters of slurry density that work and certain that don't, although you're rarely going to measure it with the kind of precision that I do for this. It is a very important thing. Yeah, I agree, Chris. JFM. Yep. And that is fine. I personally have a lot of things where it's like, yeah, it's electrons. Somebody today has commented about, I don't have that many fingers and toes. And I said, I guess electrons have a lot many fingers and toes because they make these newfangled things called calculators. And that's the way I look at it is, if you don't really need to know it to that level of complexity, why worry about it? Okay, Patrick. Thank you. Exactly, David. Fluidity matters in this case, not as much as a gravity separation would. And we're running it fairly dense on the slurry density because we're trying to use as little leaching solution as possible so that we dilute the gold as little as possible. See if I can put this camera down just a smidgy poo. Not enough yet. It's easier on my back if I can rest my arms there. Yeah, that's better. Okay. How big is my leaching bed going to be? It's not going to be a bed. I'm also going to set up a series of videos that apply to leaching in general, using my stuff as kind of exemplars. But when you're leaching, there's three basic kinds of leaching. There's heap leaching, vat leaching, and tank leaching. Heap leaching is you put a big impermeable membrane on the ground, pile the rock up on top, throw the solution on top, let it percolate through, collect it, you get your gold out that way. Negatives to heap leaching: very slow, inefficient. If you get better than 60% recovery, you're doing okay. If you're better than 70%, you're doing really well. Anything better than 80% is truly exceptional heap leaching. Now, vat leaching, you make a container of some sort. It's often just a hole in the ground that's lined, like cinder block walls, a concrete floor, and and things like that, and then dirt around it to support the walls. And you take your finely crushed ore, put it in there with the leaching solution, and fill it up, and then drain the solution, and then fill it up and drain the solution again. Because it's not being agitated, it can't dissolve nearly as fast. This is more expensive than heap leaching, but more efficient. This is what you would use in an intermediate grade ore. Everything you saw on that sheet I showed you earlier, this one here, if you had quantities of that, that would all be perfectly fine for vat leaching or even agitation tank leaching on a large enough scale. But because you're not stirring it, you still have lack of efficiency and lack of speed. The fastest way to get the gold and the most efficient way to get the gold is to crush the rock up real fine, put it in the solution and stir the bejesus out of it, and that'll dissolve the gold fairly quickly, what it can get to. That's called agitation tank leaching, usually shortened to just tank leaching. Heap, vat, tank. The agitation is assumed. We have rich enough ore that we're going to be doing, in all probability, agitation tank leaching. Let's see, when you electrolyte the gold ions onto the cathode, it comes onto the cathode. The cathode is where the material plates. Okay, it will plate onto the cathode. Depending upon the parameters, it may plate fairly cleanly, or it may be pretty rough and ugly. It all depends on the other stuff in the solution and how hard you're pushing it and things like that. Usually it will form kind of a rusty, sludgy, nasty looking coating on there. It's not real pretty usually. And then you remove it from the cathode and further refine it from there. At the mine I used to work at, we used steel wool. We would then take the steel wool out, dissolve the steel in acid, wash it with water, filter the sludge, dry the sludge and mix it with a flux, melt it down into a doré bar. The anode does not collect gold and it does not dissipate it into solution. It's already in solution. One of the problems is because the electricity is trying to push the anode into solution, it loves to just dissolve. They use some high quality stainless steels. Carbon is really good. It doesn't like to break up at all because it's covalently bonded. But it has to be something conductive, and it's got to be conductive but very non-corrosive. That's why Chris turned me on to some titanium expanded metal a guy was selling, because the titanium theoretically will be pretty darn resistant to the corrosive effects of being an anode. Yeah, container leaching is kind of a vat leaching, but the agitation tank leaching is what we're looking at doing. And that means you not only have to have a container, but you have to have some way of stirring the slurry. Now, I've got some ideas where I might be able to do this pretty cheap. We'll see what happens. I'll let you all know. It's not something that could be patented very well anyhow. So, yeah, I'm thinking that, Chris. I'm also thinking a hybrid. You have a tank leach for the first, looks like on the grass, about 6 hours. You can see how that curve flattens off there, folks. Well, that's at about 6 hours. So if you take an agitation tank for 6 hours and then put it into some kind of a vat, that might work just fine. Carbon breaks up too. Darn it. Titanium is again. Well, what's the anode, Chris? I thought this was going to be the anode also. Well, I know you were planning on plating to titanium mesh, although we could do it to steel wool too. But the titanium's also the cathode, isn't it, Chris? Now he goes, stainless anode is fine. Jeez. My brother's got sheets of stainless steel, expanded metal. Yeah, you hate to sacrifice copper, though, because if nothing else, you contaminate your solution. The titanium will work for the cathode, the anode, won't it, Chris? David, that is correct. The cathode is a collector, the anode is the positive side, and you push a constant DC voltage through it for the process. Yes, and the DC voltage is set to efficiently plate what you're looking for and minimize other things that you don't want. How big a container is it? It would depend how much you're going to do. For example, we're going to start small scale 25-pound batches in a cement mixer. So for 25 pounds, 6 hours, a cement mixer is fine. We're kind of a target is about a ton a day. Now, if you're leaching for 6 hours and then dumping it into a vat, then you would need about 20 cubic feet of agitation tank. That's why that slurry density calculation was important. On the other hand, if you want to agitate it for 24 hours, you're going to need about 80 cubic feet of agitation tank. Now that excludes the freeboard and stuff you need above that to keep from splashing out and things like that. But I mean, it's actually going to fill about 80 cubic feet of tank. So that's what we need. Back batching is of a good recovery. I'm not sure, Badruddin, what that means. I don't know if it's a language terminology barrier or something like that. I'm not sure what you mean by back batching. That's what I'm saying, Jeff. It does to some extent. Yeah, but there should be enough copper in it. I mean, without any electrolysis at all, we're getting really good recoveries. Why a vortex? We have a language issue, Badruddin. Yeah, I know the copper kind of catalyzes the thiosulfate. Oh, I'm sure it is already on the market, David. Badruddin, again, we're having a little bit of thing, but any kind of a spiral or any kind of gravity separation, trying to separate the individual gold particles by their density is not going to work on this ore because they are so extremely small. They won't even settle in water. And so we literally have to dissolve them because a density separation will not work. The average size particle here is about 1/10 the size of powdered sugar. Terry, there's something called a Pachuca tank, Pachuka, used for cyanide for a long time that does essentially that. Instead of just bubbling water, though, if you have a tube and you immerse it in liquid and you inject water here, then the liquid in the tube is lighter than the liquid outside the tube, and it sucks it up. If you see those guys dredging sand from old shipwrecks and stuff, they're usually using what they call an airlift dredge, where it's a hose, it's injecting air in it, and it's sucking it up. The guys in Bering Sea Gold and stuff are usually using a Venturi tube to create the suction, but an airlift pump works fine. A Pachuca tank is just a tank with a piece of pipe in the middle. You inject air and it takes the slurry and makes it do this. It gives you excellent oxygenation of the solution, which in cyanide is a very good thing. And the agitation is good. Now, if you had a solution where you didn't want oxygen in it, then that would be a bad thing. And you go with more of a mechanical agitation. There's, again, different ways of doing that. Like you could use a Venturi tube. You could just, instead of air, you just pump slurry from the top through the bottom. Oh, airlift is in the brewing industry too, huh? Okay. It's not just they drag the water along, Chris, but they also decrease the density of the column inside the tube compared to the density of the water outside. So it creates a pressure differential in addition. According to one documentary I was watching, they said at 40 feet, it'll literally rip your arm off they were, uncovering a shipwreck. And they said they had to be very careful because it will literally just suck your arm off. Chris, can you decipher what Badradine is talking about? Beret mixing. I'm not sure. You might know that term. The problem with that, David, is it has to all be solution or you dilute the crap out of your solution really fast. This is a closed circuit. You only add enough makeup water, in theory, to account for evaporation losses and losses to tailings. Your tailings are never 100% dry. And so you do that, but you can't just be adding water willy-nilly. This is a fine chemical system. Okay. But you could take a slurry pump and pump slurry from the top of the tank down to the bottom of the tank and use it to run a jet to move a lot more slurry than you're actually pumping. Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense, Chris. I think that's what he's talking about. Yes, that would make perfect sense. In Badradine, you're absolutely correct. That's what we're going to use as a cement mixer. If you had an old cement mixer truck, that would work really well because you could probably get, 5 tons in a single load. And okay, excellent, Chris. You did it again. David, but a Venturi pump takes liquid to move more liquid. Something like 5 or 10 times as much. You have jet well pumps where you're pumping water down into the well to jet more water up out of the well. It uses a Venturi effect. Most dredges that I've seen use a Venturi tube to to create the suction. You got like a 2-inch pump creating suction for a 6-inch hose. Same principle. And Badradine, I mean, if you had, let's say, an old cement truck, you could throw 5 tons of crushed ore in it. You undo that, pump it out. And okay, why not Venturi? I know the wear rate would be high. Chris. Usually they use big giant propellers, or just, they call them impellers, but basically there's a shaft coming down into the tank, and then there's a big giant, like 4 braided propeller that just slowly turns in the bottom of the tank. Okay, whatever. You can pump it. But anyhow, there's ways of making these things happen. Well, they call it a Venturi pump when, okay, here we go. You take one piece of pipe, and this is suction. Okay, jet pump, Venturi pump. Basically, have a tube, you have water being pumped in at high velocity here. It snags the water that's already in the tube and pushes it yonder, creating suction over here. Now, whatever you want to call it, if that's called an induction pump, fine. I've told they were called Venturi pumps.
Don't argue with Chris.
Jet pump and Venturi pumps work in oxymet. You may be correct terminology-wise. Say, I was told that was a Venturi pump. I've also called it a jet pump. Whatever. It can be done, folks. But yeah, a large cement truck, is a hell of an agitation tank. And in some cases, you might pick one up for like $5,000. For the size of an agitation tank you got, that's pretty amazing. Portability is good too. I say that would probably do in the neighborhood of, 3 to 5 tons of ore at a whack. Yeah, exactly, David. Thingy works.
Widget.
Oh, Eva corrected me. It's a widget. But anyhow.
The thingy is entirely different, as is a gadget, a gizmo, and a thingamabob.
Anyhow, so that's the basic thing. In an agitation tank, you have to have some kind of agitation. And I say right now we have a cement mixer. It was already there. All I had to do was fix it. It needed a switch and a belt and 3 motor bolts. So yeah, and that'll work, David. Eva wins. Of course she wins. But anyhow, Badradine says hello.
Hello.
Actually, he said hi, madame. So I don't want to be less formal than he was.
Good evening, monsieur.
So anyhow, the agitation tank is fastest and most effective. Again, we're looking at 93% recovery into solution in about 24 hours. Eva says it's nice to hear your voice. She'll be up later. She's trying to figure out what she wants to do on her report. She's weird that way. I like to get stuff done ahead of time. She's like, I'll figure it out. But that's the way she is.
Well, that's because I'm busy making money.
Wide 1 ounce to the ton. Now, if you have 1 ounce to the ton ore, the difference between 80% recovery and 90% recovery is $150 a ton. That pays for your mining cost. So that's why the efficiency of the extraction process is so critical in a high-grade ore. On a low-grade ore, first of all, you have to have a lot of tonnage, and then you have to do it cheaply. That's why these big, giant open-pit heap leach mines, I mean, I guarantee if they were getting stuff 1/10 of an ounce to the ton for a heap leach mine, they'd be going like, whoa, big money. I mean, we thought that was, man, we're making big money here. About a 900% profit. Apparently there's a glitch here. Question for Eva. Did you hear that George Soros and Bill Gates backed a consortium to buy the UK maker of COVID tests for $41 million?
Yes, I did.
Yes, she did, David. Thank you. So anyhow, that's why there's 3 different types. There's not one type of leaching that makes the most sense for everything. The heap leach, high volume, low cost. Negatives are extraordinary permitting costs. You can't do it on a small scale, period. On the other hand, on an intermediate grade material, 1/10 of an ounce to 1/4 ounce to the ton, in a small scale, or even like over in Africa a lot, they do vat leaching because they can't afford the agitation tank leaching, and the cyanide still gets some better recovery than if they just did a gravity separation. And that's why in the low tech world, vat leaching tends to be fairly commonplace. In our case, we're trying to create tank leaching situations that, quite frankly, I think it would be quite easy to scale up and move down to a low-tech part of the world. I have some interesting ideas on that I will be working on as we go. It's not in the far future here. It's going to be fairly soon, I would think. So anybody who's in one of those areas, artisanal mining sort of thing, keep an eye, because in the next 6 months I may have something that will be extremely applicable to what you're doing. We shall see what we shall see. I don't know any reason why it wouldn't work. But I don't know. Now, when I'm out there at the ranch this week, building I'm going to call it the tailings disposal area, but it's as much a tailings containment area as anything else. It's not designed to throw the tailings in and leave it there forever. It's an area designed to put the tailings from the agitation leach and allow us to, over time, recover the residual gold and the residual solution from them. And that's, what I intend to do. We shall see how well it works. But once you've done your agitation tank leaching, then the problem is you have a slurry that contains gold. And how do you get the gold out of it? One of the desirable things about a resin adsorption circuit is real simple. You just throw the resin in there while you're leaching it, and it grabs it. Hello, Pedro. Yeah, this is the kind of stuff that you might work out down there in Venezuela. And I presume you're kind of artisanal scale out there somewhere. Because if it's hard rock, real fine stuff, what I'm working on right now might work well. But anyhow, the liquid that's still in the tailings has gold in it. One thing you can do to recover that gold is to re-wet and remix the tailings with barren solution. You take your first run, decant, in other words, let it settle and pour off the liquid from the top. What you can, run that through your recovery circuit, and then take the liquid from that, which is depleted, hopefully very depleted in gold, mix it back with that same solids, and that dilutes the gold that's still in the liquid that's in the solids, the damp tailings, call it. And so then when you decant it again, you've reduced the amount of gold in the tailings that's just basically stuck in the liquid. And by doing that several times, you can get the gold down as low as you want to on a cost efficiency basis. There comes a point where you say it's just not worth it anymore. But you're not recovering solution. You're still going to have solution in there. For that, what you would generally want to do is rinse it with water to kind of wash that out. So the whole idea of this tailings disposal area is, once we're done with the first processes and we've recovered as much gold as we want to, put it out there and just let rain, or you can sprinkle water on it and kind of rinse it and let it drain down to a collection sump. And then if there's too much water, you can let it evaporate. If you don't have enough, use that to make up solution volume. And if you have too much water there, just let it evaporate. In this environment, evaporation exceeds rainfall in general. And add water as needed. That stuff in the sump will have gold that's rinsed out of your tailings, and solution chemicals and everything else, and that goes right back into the circuit to do fresh ore. So in that way, you're never throwing it away. You wouldn't want to do that if you had something building up in the solution that was highly detrimental. So Pedro's been working with diamonds and gold. So that sounds to me like you're in a placer operation, Pedro, because that's usually the only place you find both of those together at the same time. Not usually in hard rock. Is things going well for you, I hope? So I say that's my plan for this out there. And again, you'll see it when I build it. Rather than do a lot of diagrams here, I'll just videotape the whole thing and you can see what I do. You've got some hard rock diamonds or just hard rock gold. I actually like Jeff's more educational videos, like the one he just did. Just take your time. For this season, we're going to bring it back to the ranch because it's a lot easier to design and build equipment and run tests. It's 8 miles from where I'm at right here, over good road, although half of it is, no, maybe less than half is unpaved, but it's pretty well maintained. It's got power. Well, it has a solar power system. It's got water, things like that. The infrastructure is there to do the testing we need. Then this winter, we can maybe build a system designed to go out in the field a lot closer to the mine. We have access to a patented claim that's maybe 2 miles line of sight from the claim. Let me look here on the map. Oh gosh, I don't have that map with me. It's in the truck. But anyhow, I think it's less than 2 miles from the mine itself. And if the road is reasonably good, it would be a fairly quick haul. There's water there. There's a flooded working there that we could use for water. It's patented, so it's essentially private land. And we could rearrange some stuff, etc. But this winter, we'd be building the equipment to move out there at the beginning of the season if we were going to start doing, like I was saying, a ton per day or something like that. Although the only real difference between there and the ranch is the haul distance. And once you get to the paved road, it's a matter of time. I timed it today. From the time we left the mine to the time we got to the apartment here was almost, it's just a shade under 2 hours. So You could make 2 trips a day like that if you had someone who's just running back and forth, or you could make 1 trip a day. We go down there, load up a truck and everything, and then come back and spend the night here. So there's lots of different options. And as we define how much ore reserves we have, what grade, and how the leaching parameters work and what we have to do to make it work, it kind of answers those questions itself. Initially, you've got lots of options, and they literally start Xing themselves off the list as time goes on and you get more information. How many times can we reuse the leach? As far as we know, near infinitely, until stuff builds up, and you're always losing some in the tailings. So that's one of the parameters we have to find out. Can we use the leach, just replenish what's been consumed and put it back into the circuit? That's what we did, for example, at both of the mines I was at, the big open pit heap leach mines. They didn't throw away anything. They just replenished and recirculated. But assume nothing. Yes, Terry, placer is a lot simpler in theory in general. Yep. You like to investigate others' opinions. Yep. Yeah. Even hard rock can be pretty difficult to define, but placer deposits, because they're put down by moving water, they can be pretty irregular. Absolutely. Interesting, David. But I say that's the basic concept. And say I take you guys on the ride and try and give you enough information where you can get a good idea. So far, the Eco Gold X seems to be working quite well. I tell you what, it's nice to have something that's not toxic. I can work in my kitchen and not worry too much. Yes, I'm careful not to mix it with the food or, wash my hands and this and that, and not the kind of caution you'd have to use with cyanide. I'm more worried about.
Couldn't use cyanide in the kitchen?
You could. You just have to be more careful. I'm more worried about the trace amounts of arsenic in the ore itself. That's probably more hazardous because it can build up over time. So
yeah, that's why medieval women in Italy used to actually eat minute amounts of arsenic in their food.
Yeah.
Because that over time it turns your nails white.
Yeah. And the other thing that's nice about placer, Terry, is that, at the end of the day, you can go, look, gold, when you're doing it this way, not so much.
Well, just y'all wait. When Bear shows off a couple of 10-ounce bars at the end of the season, you're going to be like, yeah, hard rock rocks.
Argonaut, we're planning on using a demolition hammer, specifically a Hilti TE1000 AVG, which I have. It can break almost 250 pounds of hard bull quartz an hour.
And I will be using a chisel and a 2-pound hammer.
Yeah, good luck.
Don't laugh, Bear.
Yeah, well, you're not going to be in the way of the production miners. I was thinking you can be on the dumps hand sorting stuff. I have a plan for you.
I can do that, but I want it to work in the pack rack.
If you want, as long as you're not in the way, I don't care. Yeah, it's one of those things. And yeah, David, there's arsenic everywhere. People get way too worried, in my opinion, about a lot of these
there's arsenic in apple seeds.
Toxicity things, because they graph it as a straight line from it kills everybody, it kills half, then they just straight line it down, when actually it's more like this. And in many cases, it actually does something like this, where you get as the concentration goes up from 0, you get more survival, and then the survival drops off to 100% fatality somewhere out here. But to make those straight line graphs is not representative of reality. Look up hormesis, Hormesis, if you want to understand more about it. Basically, that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That which stresses your body causes your body to become stronger against whatever it is stresses you. Yeah, pretty much, David. Yeah, Terry, pretty much. Don't lick rocks. Absolutely.
Yeah, and none of y'all defended me when he was saying, just stay out of my way. I'll see how you are.
Oh, I think David was there, but yeah, sorry, the Hilti will outperform you about 1 or 2,000 to 1, little one.
But the Hilti knows when rocks are happy, and the Hilti don't know when rocks are happy and unhappy.
It doesn't matter. When you're just taking it all, it doesn't matter.
He also doesn't know where the good shit is.
Pedro, I don't know, but if Chris Georgie is still around, Chris, question for you. Okay. Courage Doge. Here's the 3 declines. This is along the pack rat structure. I don't have numbers for confidentiality reasons, but HG stands for high grade, and this is low grade. This area here was not really sampled. There's a tunnel here and a few other things, so there wasn't much sampling done here. But yes, the pack rat structure is very high grade here, but most of this has been mined out, and that's one of the problems. There is high grade left. I don't know how much before you start bringing the roof in on you. On the other hand, on the middle decline, you could take bottom out of that and be real safe. Actually make it safer in many ways by putting in some stoles as you go. I'm not that familiar with running hydrocyclones and centrifugal bowls, Pedro. Okay, there's your answer from Chris. Yes, you need clean water. I think David's getting excited, little one. So, anyhow, yeah, Chris knows a lot more things than I do. I know more about certain things than he does. And I'm the guy actually on site. So I get the fun part, which is getting my hands dirty, although it's also the hard part. But Chris has been an enormous help. Can't tell you how much assistance he's been, but I think he's having a good time. I hope so. Hopefully we'll have him up here later this summer if he can get away for a bit. That would be really cool. Love to see him up here for a bit.
So would I.
So anyhow, that's the problem with the pack rat is finding more ore around it. I'm sure there are more ore pockets. It's very pockety, very inconsistent. It could be that if we just kept sinking that lower decline, we'd be into another equally good pocket in a big hurry. It's hard to tell. We'll worry about it when it gets to that point. But it's very frustrating knowing that there's more good ore somewhere there, but not being able to tell how to go directly to it. Interestingly enough, the pack rat structure on the other side of the perpendicular vein that the middle decline's on shows no mineralization. to speak of. And I mean, they followed it for, I don't know, I think 30 feet, something like that. They drove a tunnel there. The pack rat structure is offset about 5 feet. You have this perpendicular vein like this, and you have the pack rat structure, and one side moved over about 5 feet. Actually, it would probably be easier to do it this way, And so they tunneled along that for like 30 feet and found nothing. Now, that doesn't mean that another 5 feet and they would have hit the big one. Can't tell. We can also follow the pack rat structure along surface the other direction. Yeah, sometimes, Pedro, you just got to take the time to settle it. You give it enough time, it'll settle pretty well usually. But that's why the pack rat doesn't look like the primary target for mining. The perpendicular vein, we can set up a head frame and start slicing bottom right from the top and moving it out of there efficiently. And that, is, the mining cost is important. And the other thing is ground control cost is much less. Where the pack rat structure is now, and where there's pockets still left, it could all be mined out if you put in enough ground support. You can always support the ground if you want to spend enough time and money. David, if you're talking about me and Chris, that's because you get to see my face. All you see is his text, so can't compete there. It could also be a lot more of I think it's called laterite soils, where in the tropics, all that rain has a little bit of carbonic acid in it from the carbon dioxide, and over the years, it just turns everything to clay. It just, dissolves the rock. So, as I say, that's basically our evil plan for now. It's still fluid. From an execution standpoint, technically, mining the middle decline is a lot simpler. In terms of assays of materials that can be easily removed, it looks a lot simpler. How deep does that material go? I don't know. Damn good question. As we go down, we're going to have to put in more stoles for ground support, but the plan is to put them in right above our heads, so that as you're going down the decline, you don't have to worry about hitting them where they're needed. And by putting them in as you dig stuff out, it makes it a lot easier. You're not working out in the middle of nowhere, hanging in thin air. And I think, say that one video I showed you, so, there's about 20 tons hanging right there. I think there's 10, 20 tons hanging right there, and the samples I've taken seem to be running around an ounce to the ton. I don't know why they left it. Of course, I haven't been able to sample all of it because it's out there, it's hanging in the middle of nowhere. It also makes me very nervous knowing that's a perpendicular structure that's got a point of attachment or a plane of attachment very close, maybe a foot or so, 18 inches in. There's a plane where it's just stuck, and it can unstuck just as easily. And if it does, if you're beneath it, life's going to get real unpleasant. And my thought was to basically dig a catch bench underneath it and drop it on the catch bench and haul it out. And to get to it, if here's your walls, and we need to get out there in the middle of nowhere because the floor goes away real quick, you take and cut a couple sockets in the walls, stick a stole in there, wedge it in place, just a timber. And then you can lay planking on that, get out another couple feet, do the same thing, and peel the wall as you're going, dropping it onto that catch bench and hauling it out, from there. That's my evil plan. We'll see when we get there. Sometimes the evil plan doesn't work out too well.
Well, that's because you are no good at evil planning.
I don't know. Could be. But anyhow, that's the tentative plan for that. Nice thing is there's no surface disturbance, so you don't need any permits as you're hauling it off to private land and using non-toxic chemicals. Makes it a lot simpler on the small scale. So 7-Eleven. Anyone got any questions here? It's always so much more fun with Jim. He's always got more stuff. My suspicion is no, although California can get pretty wet.
California is still there.
Unfortunately, Courage, we have no historical data on this mine whatsoever. It would be nice. It's just, we haven't done an in-depth search. That may be something I could do next winter too. It'd be an in-depth search on this mine. I do have a name that's on a map, and so that was probably the official name at the time. It's not the name we use right now, not for confidential reasons. It's just it got changed. So anyhow, we could look that up hopefully over at Butte. That might be a good day of research or something like that. David, I think, let's see, berms, let's see. Yeah, coastal Oregon and Washington are rainforests, but yeah, not tropical. Berms, I think what Chris was talking about when it comes to berms is if you make a bunch of berms in a pond so that the stuff flows from one end to the other, it's got to go a much farther distance, and that gets better settling. I think that's what he was talking about with the berms. But I say that would be nice if we had some information, especially if they had some information that would lead us to some kind of predictability and say, okay, this is what they expected to find and why they expected to find it. But we don't have anything. We're just having to get all the information ourselves the hard way. Luckily, we have a lot of stuff exposed. This is just a vein on the surface. As you can see, that pack rat structure doesn't look like crap. And there may be more like that along that hill where it's at surface. It's all been leached out and there's nothing worth a crap. But, 10 feet underground, life may change big time. The other thing is there are other mines along this structure that indicate the same thing, very pockety. I think it's a very irregular replacement vein, and as such, it's going to be very hard to predict. But you're likely, if you can figure out some way to find those pockets, like through geophysics or something, then you might be able to score some serious money. And that's one of the things we'll be looking at in the future, I would imagine. Yeah, we're going to keep it pretty small. First of all, there's not big tons there that we know of. So we're going to keep it small, and it'll just basically be a demolition hammer, a hoisting system, and stuff like that. And I think if the hoisting system works the way I think it will, it'll be kind of cool too. But we shall see what we shall see. The plan always looks great until it meets reality. But yeah, that's the plan, is to keep it fairly modest for now. Now, again, we don't know. For all we know, this section here is literally just the tip of an iceberg. Can't tell. This, you notice there's some low grade here. This may just be the start of another big pocket. Don't know. Absolutely don't know. I know all these shutdowns have disrupted cash flows to the point where it's having an effect on what we're doing. You notice when I said we were save some money by doing only 2 samples on the middle curve there, that's an economization step that probably wouldn't have happened, except there's disruptions to cash flow. So we got to try and be as efficient as possible. And now that I've got curve after curve after curve, I figure that, give me a 6 and a 24-hour, result, and I can give you a pretty good approximation of the curve. That depends on how hard the rock is. The perpendicular vein does not appear to me to be tough enough, but that can be very deceptive because the surface that I'm dealing with is right near where they were blasting. And that does have a tenderization effect. Plus, it's been exposed to the elements for a while, and that's going to do some tenderization. Now, I can tell you this, that pack rat structure, the good stuff down deep, that is not easy to tear up at all. And that might very well be Sierra Blaster time. Absolutely. I think that the pack rat structure is likely to require something like Sierra Blasters. The perpendicular vein, I think, is likely not to need Sierra Blasters. The interesting thing about the perpendicular vein, perpendicular vein metal decline here, is notice it goes off the page. Yeah, well, it goes at least one more number down there, and that's just as far as I got. I never got to the bottom because my rope wasn't long enough. I got a 90-foot rope, and it was hooked here. But there came a point where they seemed to have shrunk it all back down again to just big enough for an efficient decline. And it appeared to me that they hadn't hit any good grade down there, so I didn't worry about getting a longer rope and going down there to check it out. That's another thing worth doing. Probably should get like a 150-foot rope anyhow. There's certain areas where we might want 2 ropes. If you have 2 people, it's best to be on 2 different ropes for a lot of reasons. Okay, I'll draw it for him, Chris. Zigzag trenches. Okay, Pedro. Now, let's say you built a big pond. Like that. And your water comes into the pond there. Well, by the time it gets to here, it's only gone that far and only dropped so much. Now let me show you something different. Now, you dump at the same spot, but now it has to go over to here, down to there, up to here, down to there, up to here, down to there. And using a ruler, the direct distance across the pond would be 3.5 inches. By doing it the other way, it's 1.5 plus 3.5 is 5, plus 1 is 6, plus 2.5 is 8.5, 9, 11.5, 12.5, 13, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, almost 20 inches. So you've taken this distance that the water has to travel from 3.5 inches to almost 20 inches while using the exact same amount of surface area. Now, if this was reasonably tight soil where you're not going to be losing water, and you got a reasonable amount of water, you could just use a backhoe to dig these trenches and pile these berms up like this. But that's what he means by a series of zigzag trenches. If you didn't have anything built, you just start at this side anyhow, and then these would go all the way across. That what you're talking about, Chris? Let's see. I think the one with add some sodium fluoride in small quantities to test. I can help you with clay in some cases. Okay. Yeah, and then some guy wrote an article for the California Mining Journal where he's using something that's even a bit bigger than a Sierra Blast. It's basically the largest charge that fits underneath the explosive criterion in the ATF regulations. And so that, I say, might very well come in handy as we start continuing to sink that lower decline and try and get material out of there. We might very well do that. We'll just have to see what we shall see. And a lot of stuff depends on permitting and things like that, which I don't know about you guys, but I think the whole system's in flux right now. And I'm not trying to predict anything 12 months from now. I have no idea, you know? Can you leach the black sand? Theoretically, absolutely. Yes, you could leach the gold out of the black sand. If you were going to do it on that small a scale, what you could do too is use like zinc precipitation or something to recover the gold instead of electroplating and this and that, although you could do that too if you had the proper equipment. But you can actually dissolve the gold, get your clean solution to a second container, add some zinc, and it will basically plate the gold onto the zinc. Then you filter it and smelt the zinc. Some black sands don't magnetically separate. It all depends where you're at, David. If it is magnetically separatable, that's great. That's a nice, easy way to get stuff done. A lot of black sands don't stick to a magnet. Okay, Courage Dog. In order to crush finely crush rock. Okay. The first break is easy if you're taking run-of-mine material. Jaw crusher. It's most portable. Even big jaw crushers are pretty darn efficient nowadays. You almost have to go to big gyratory crushers to beat them. We have a big rock crusher, like a 10 by 16 if we need it. The boss got one used somewhere. He gets a lot of stuff used somewhere. I have my impact mill, my 6-inch, what was it, bob mill? Yeah, Bowen Ore Buster. Yeah. I got a 6-inch bob mill, which does a little better than 100 pounds an hour, finally pulverizes it just fine. That's somewhere in the range of that 1 ton a day sort of thing. The mill I built for Jimmy, which was an 8-inch mill, it was doing almost 200 pounds an hour. Nice fine crush would work fine. If we need to go more volume, we do have a Stutenroth 2-ton an hour mill. I'm not sure how fine the grind is on that. We'd have to fire it up and I'd have to run some stuff through and we'd have to see. It's going to be a lot dustier. And you're going to have to do some screening and recirculation of the oversize. That's going to add some complexity and stuff. When we get to that point, we'll see what it does, what it takes to make it do what we want it to do, and then we can go from there. And so for small scale operations, usually an impact mill is the most efficient. It's definitely a lot more portable than a ball mill. Ball mills are very efficient, but they're big and they're heavy. Wear rates are much less maintenance. So my impact mill, we'd be changing wear parts probably every 4 to 8 hours. Jeff, it sure can be. The original rock might have had the magnetite and the gold in contact in the stuff from our mine. Oh, where is it? Got it right off the bat. See that upper picture? Those are gold particles in iron oxide. And the only way you're going to get them loose is to either crush the whole rock a whole lot smaller than talcum powder or leach it. That's just the way it is. So in our particular rock, that's the way life is. It kind of sucks, but hey, you got to deal with reality. And here's another picture showing that's an iron oxide particle primarily. And see the gold particles all stuck to it. That's all part of it. Now, the reason you never can leach 100% is there's no doubt particles inside that rock too. These would all be what you call mineral exposure. They're not liberated because they're not loose. This is what you call mineral exposure. It's on the surface of the mineral grain, and as such, it's accessible to the solution. Oh, and those are actually electron micrographs of our ore. So that, what was it we spent over there? Was it $700? I think it was a little over $1,000 for that. All that testing at Montana Tech, but it answered a lot of questions in one set of tests.
Very worthwhile stuff.
Yeah, Jeff, and the black sands may or may not be useful to leach. Have them assayed. blend them well, dry them, blend them, and send off a sample for assay. And Chris says sometimes gold can look black because it's got manganese on it. Yep. Yeah, Pedro. That may have to, since you're in Venezuela, it may have to have something, what you can get across the border or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, generally you'd want to go much larger pieces of equipment for 250 tons an hour. There's a lot of 1 ton per hour mills out there, so that'd only be 25 instead of 50. But yeah, David, that black poison was it was fun. It was interesting. I enjoyed that. That particular material was quite difficult to get high efficiency extraction from. No, I haven't had any contact with Ryan pretty much since we left. I think he might have asked if I was coming back, and for other reasons, I don't intend to be going back to Tucson. In terms of Montana B versus Ryan's, well, they're night and day. Ryan's ore is a fairly clean quartz with gold particles mainly above 35 microns, running all the way up to 100 mesh. 35 microns, I think, is about 500 mesh, or is that 20 microns? But anyhow, the stuff at Montana B is about 2,000 mesh, less than 10 microns. Now, because the gold particles were a larger size, and because it was a nice clean ore, it's basically gold and quartz. It was a very simple ore. I was getting like 80% recovery, running it through my impact mill, running it over my gravity concentrator. Okay. And that was getting me like 80% recovery. Pretty simple system. Montana B, on the other hand, totally sucks. First of all, it's running 20 to 30% iron oxide. It's got extremely fine gold. 80% passing, what was it, 7.8 microns? I forget the number exactly, but it was pretty darn small. So let's see. Where's all the conclusions here? Let's see. Let me see where the... Hello. Magnifying glass, bad eyes.
I'll be ready in about 5 minutes.
Okay. So to give you an idea, and this is Montana B. See that scale down there? That's 20 microns. That whole scale is running like 600 mesh. So that gives you an idea. Even the larger particles there are much less than 20 microns. So very, very small gold. It is so small it literally will not settle. Some of it will. I could get about 15 to 18% recovery in my gravity concentrator. But I did one test last summer where I took the finely crushed ore, mixed it with water, and then just waited, I think it was a minute, and poured off like a third of the liquid on the top. Did that a couple more times. The suspended solids in the top part of the liquid had more gold per ton than the head ore. It floats that well. Yep. And as such, they're entirely different. That's one of the big problems with hard rock. It's a problem in placer too, but every deposit is different. And as Jim would tell you if he was here, what worked over there doesn't necessarily work over here. You just have to figure it out, test, and see what happens. And this particular ore up here, entirely different technique needed. Not just used, needed. Gravity separation will not work on this, period. Again, something like, most of the gold is 1/10 the size of powdered sugar. It's insane. So yeah, big difference. Luckily, the ore does work well with the Eco Gold X. The Eco Gold X chews it up. It doesn't require a whole lot of other chemicals to, say, bring the pH where you need it. It's not an acid ore. It's already somewhat basic. So like the Pack Rat Penthouse stuff, we didn't even need to add any lime. And the perpendicular vein or the lower decline dump stuff, we added just a very little bit of lime. Very small, what was that? 1/10 the amount of Eco Gold X, just a smidge to bring that pH up. Did you bank your gold or sell it on the market? First of all, it's not my gold. This would be my principal. He pays me to do this. And we haven't gotten enough to matter at this point from Montana B. What he does with that, it will be entirely up to him. If he sells at the market, whether he sells it on a private market sort of thing, or whether he sells it to a refiner, I don't know. What, if anything, he's planning? I kind of guess he might be planning on just keeping it or sending it to a refiner, having them refine it and give it to him in rounds or ingots that are stamped and certified. As far as I know, except in California, apparently California has a law where you pay a 5% tax on gold when you recover it. But federal law, I believe, last I heard, until you sell it, you don't pay taxes on it. So, I mean, if you were digging along and you found, a 500-ounce nugget and loaded it in your truck, took it home and parked it, in your garage, you're not legally required to pay taxes on that until you sell it, because you can't tell how much the value is until it's been sold. But by gravity, do you mean like a vortex concentrator? Kevin, it's not a dumb question. If you haven't been listening to a lot of people, you won't have heard the term before. By gravity separation, I mean any separation process that relies on the differences in specific gravity or density to recover, and it doesn't have to be gold. Sluicing, jigs, panning, spirals, anything that uses the density difference to make the separation is called a gravity separation. And there's a huge number of different ways of doing that. Concentrating spirals are different than what you're thinking of too. But what I'm thinking of there. But you got the spirals you guys are used to, then the actual spiral classifiers like they use in mineral processing. Anything that uses the density difference to make the separation is called a gravity separation. According to the manufacturer, Jeff, yes, Eco Gold X works with zinc precipitation. He sells a kit to do zinc precipitation. It was about $65. Now, another thing that he is marketing the Eco Gold X for is for recovering precious metals from electronic scrap. Right now, one of the big things is people take this electronic scrap and they try and remove all the gold-plated parts, and then they try and exactly. Then they try and dissolve everything that isn't gold, and then filter.
And coincidentally, that's going to be on the tinfoil hat report tonight.
Okay. If you are using Eco Gold X, you should be able to just take your electronic scrap, crush it up, throw it in the solution, dissolve the good stuff, filter it, zinc precipitate, and then smelt it directly. If you're listening, Ken, this might really make things a lot easier on you. I haven't determined all this at this point, but once I figure out everything, I'm planning on letting you know if you're still listening. If not, I will hunt you down and let you know about it for all the help you gave us. $5 an ounce. Not sure what that means, Chris. Not sure what he meant by that cryptic comment.
Probably what the California charges.
Oh, $5 an ounce. That's right. $5 per ounce is the tax. Correct. Yep. Idaho State Land Department expects 5% of what you find on their lands. Yeah, but that's a state land, not the federal land. That's not a federal law. And state lands, like in Arizona, you have to pay them rent plus a royalty. Whereas with BLM, you don't. Well, you can rent it. You can't pay a claim holding fee, but you don't have to, theoretically, etc. As far as I know, that should be fine. If they want 5% of the net smelter return, give them 5% of the gold. But call the particular people who collect that and see what it is. If they have a problem, you may have to make some arrangements. Right now, I'm working full time for my principal up here. There's a number of reasons for that, but it's a very nice arrangement I have, and I'm having a good time. We get along quite well, and if I find anything of substance or make something big, then we would negotiate some more substantial agreement. For example, if we build a mill that does custom milling, or we hit a big mine or whatever, then we probably negotiate some other kind of agreement. Right now, I'm happy. There's a lot of secondary considerations. I do have a little bit of spare time. I'll have more spare time in the winter. I do help people out just on the internet. People have questions, or one thing people like to do is send me a report and say, well, here's the report on the mine I've got. What do you think? And I'll usually just look those over and give you my opinion for free on that, because it's interesting. It's fun. It also gets me more contacts. But in the wintertime, if I was free, then theoretically I could go do some consulting work if we weren't busy here, because there's quite a few months where it's just too snowy to get out in the hills, and where it's awfully hard just to keep water liquid at times. There was one time in February here where we went 2 weeks and it never got above freezing, and the minimum temperature was around 20 below zero. So you can't really do much leaching or anything else unless you've got an enclosed shop with heating. Yeah, then you got a problem. Yeah, circuit boards, sometimes recovering the gold from that can be fine. And this Eco Gold X, I think, could work pretty well for that. Kevin, I don't think anything will catch the micron-sized floaty stuff that I've got. In other situations, you can have stuff like, say, like 35 micron gold that my concentrator gets. There's some things that are going to lose it, like a sluice box will lose that. And it might work. I'm not familiar with the little gold spinner, so I don't know. Yeah, David, this stuff might work well for that. And if you're doing it on a small scale with high concentrations, then either a little electroplating cell or zinc precipitation may make a lot of sense. Yeah, Chris, there's a lot of stuff there. We had that one summer we spent with Ken. Eva had a great time tearing stuff apart until she bunged her wrist up. But yeah, we tore through a lot of electronics. That was kind of fun. A lot of copper, especially in those old CRTs. That and the ferrite. I don't know how valuable ferrite is, but got a lot of it.
I'll be over there in just a minute.
Eva says she'll be here shortly. So everybody get ready. Yeah, Ken had a good source for old electronics that it was pretty much inexhaustible. But
yeah, because they have an e-waste recycling program up there in,
don't give away secrets, little one.
In some parts of the country, they do.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. But yeah, it was kind of an interesting summer, tearing apart all that stuff. But I don't know how. Because now I'm sure that the copper we sold while I was there, he would have been a lot happier to sell it now. I don't know what price we got, but it wasn't even a good price at the time. It was down from what it had been earlier. But those CRTs, the magnets on the back have a lot of copper in them, a lot of wire, that and ferrite. The circuit boards and ICs and stuff have the gold. Yeah, I'm thinking a lot of things you could probably shred circuit boards, just chew them up, and, steep them in Gold-X and then drain them. And ferrite, Ferrite, is the sintered, powdered, they make hard parts out of it. But if you look inside of transformers and stuff, you sometimes see these black, kind of smooth colored parts. And it's an artificial iron magnetic material. It's kind of an artificial magnetite. And it's pretty much iron. Well, I don't know, Smoking. I expect them to all go up. But now you're asking me a relative question. And I can't tell you. Copper is more an industrial metal. If the economy goes down big time, then the price of copper theoretically should go down. The new supply of copper deposits is short right now. So if the economy goes steady, the price should continue to go up. And gold and silver's got industrial uses, gold some too, but I think most of the major fluctuations you would see there would be in the financial realm, and that's a totally different market. So I would expect them to move independently, and that could mean they could move the same or differently. They don't have a lot of relationship to each other. Now you might ask Eva.
The hat is in the house.
Okay.
And speaking of copper, there's big news in copper this week.
Ferrite, Ferrite, as in ferrous, iron containing. Okay. Eva is here.
Hey, y'all. Howdy. First of all, I don't know if this is happening in your part of the world, but in our part of the world, the price of gasoline has gone up 5 cents a gallon every week for the last 3 weeks. Just so you know. It's getting fairly ridiculous. Okay. Hi, Smokin'. Hi, everybody. So, speaking of copper, since Bear bought copper up, global copper supply at risk as world workers vote to strike. A tightening a tightening global copper market is facing the real possibility of simultaneous strike disruptions at 3 mines in Chile, the top producer. By far the most serious threat to global supplies comes from Escondida, the biggest copper mine in the world, where workers rejected owner BHP Group's final wage offer in voting last week. Unless the two sides can reach a deal in government-mediated talks this week, the market may be left without production from a project that last year churned out 1.2 million metric tons. That's million with an M. It's like ridiculous. Yeah, David, it costs us $55.12 to fill one tank on bugs. We only did one. Two smaller mines, Codelco's Andina and JX Nippon Mining and Metals Caserones, are at the same stage in their collective bargaining. That puts upwards of 7% of world production at risk in a particularly sensitive moment in the metal cycle and in Chilean politics. Labor tensions are intensifying just as trillions of dollars in government stimulus fuel demand for industrial metals. Copper futures have gained over the past 2 weeks after retreating from an all-time high in May. On Monday, prices advanced as much as 0.8% to $9,810 a ton on the LME and traded at $9,771.50 at 1:37 p.m. in London. The windfall enjoyed by producers is emboldening mine workers, with host nations also looking at ratcheting up taxes to help solve inequalities exacerbated by the pandemic. In Chile, that's all playing out as the nation drafts a new constitution that may lead to tougher rules on water, glaciers, mineral, and community rights with presidential elections in November. At the same time, companies are striving to keep labor costs in check in a cyclical business, and as ore quality deteriorates and input prices start to rise. In last week's vote, members rejected BHP's proposal by an overwhelming 99.5%. Dang, that is a serious...
That's pretty unusual.
That's bad. Union leaders say the company is dangling a large one-time bonus in exchange for longer hours and new demands in a bid to boost productivity and profit. BHP said its proposal included better conditions and new benefits, and it remains open to dialogue. Quote, "We hope that this strong vote will be the decisive wake-up call for BHP to initiate substantive discussions to reach satisfactory agreements. If it wants to avoid a lengthy conflict that would be the costliest in the country's union history," the union said. Yeah. So, if this continues to play out, our world copper output this year could shrink by 7%, which is not very good. And yes, commodities are continuing to go way up. In gold news, gold price can still top $3,000 amid recovery, a fund says. Gold is primed to surge to fresh highs as the risk around central banks unwinding massive stimulus are underappreciated by investors, said a fund manager who forecast the metal's ascent to a record last year. Diego Parilla, who manages the $250 million Quadriga Igneo fund, said there isn't widespread awareness of the long-term damage that's been caused by ultra-loose monetary and fiscal policies. Artificially low interest rates have created asset bubbles that are too big to burst, which will make it very difficult for central banks to normalize without risking their collapse. The tapering process will be glacial in terms of speed. Keep that in mind when we talk about inflation here, said the Madrid-based Parilla, who correctly predicted in 2016 gold would climb to a record within 5 years. I think the drivers for gold's strength not only remain, but have actually been strengthened. The fund manager said he's sticking to his view that gold could rise to $3,000 to $5,000 an ounce in the next 3 to 5 years. The Haven asset, which reached an all-time high of $2,075.40 in August 2020, has traded near $1,800 over the last few weeks. Gold took a tumble after the Fed's hawkish shift in June, when officials sped up their timetable for policy tightening and said they would start discussing scaling back bond buying. Yeah, buying back your own debt is a bad idea anyway, but we're not going to go there yet. Treasuries have been rallying since the end of March, even as inflation accelerates, pushing 10-year real yields to a record low. That would typically raise the appeal of holding non-interest-bearing bullion, but prices are still well below last year's high. Gold is disconnected from some of the moves in treasuries and real yields, but could get a boost from a major risk-off event that would make it clear central banks aren't in control as much as people think, said Parilla. who has worked at Goldman Sachs Group and Bank of America's Merrill Lynch and has 25 years experience trading precious metals. Most analysts expect gold to gradually decline over the next few years.
Why?
Yeah, they're asking the good questions. Why? No clue. We'll get to that too. We'll circle back to that, at some point, maybe. No idea. The post-pandemic recovery, Fed tapering, and a stronger dollar will all weigh on the metal. Okay. Post-pandemic recovery.
Where?
Their definition of recovery is different from mine. Okay. Fed tapering. Their definition of tapering is different than mine. A stronger dollar. Well, their definition is probably, most definitely, very different from mine. Okay. They will all weigh on the metal, which will fall to $1,700 an ounce by year end and then decline further in 2022. UBS Group AG strategists, including Wayne Gordon and Giovanni Stranovo, said in a note. So they're already predicting 1,700. I wonder if paper has anything to do with this. I really do. Gold fell 0.4% to 1807.01 as of 8:27 a.m. on Monday after rising 2.5% in July. The performance of the Quadriga Ineo Fund, which launched in 2018, has suffered recently due to its strategy being long on gold and insurance and short on equities. But it remains stable with some inflow from clients, Perea said. The fund's managers remain focused on their mandate and nothing has impacted their view. Central bank money printing isn't really solving problems. It's delaying the problem. Wow, a voice of reason. No wonder everybody's disagreeing with him. Gold will benefit purely from being a physical asset that you cannot print. Gold prices did bounce back Monday after falling below the 1,800 per ounce level over the weekend. Spot gold advanced 1.6% to 18.15 and 86 cents by 1:37 p.m. Eastern. U.S. gold futures had a modest gain of 0.3%, trading at 1822.70 in New York. So, there's quite a few things to unpack there, as far as I can see. First of all, this dude is not the only dude to be talking in the 3,000 to 5,000 range. The voices are being stomped on by quarters that tend to be heavily invested in paper rather than gold. They're also being stomped on by forces that tend to be more aligned with the policies of Lord Malarkey and company. So one should take the naysayers with a grain of salt, other than the fact that most of those naysayers hold paper. So in the absence of something being done about the paper situation, they have more control and an outside influence, outsized to what they should have. Wow. And apparently, fire erupted at Tesla's big battery in Australia during testing. Seems to me this isn't the first time I've heard of these electric batteries being an issue in this issue.
No, this is a big giant power station.
Oh, this is even worse.
This is like you're trying to.
A fire has erupted at one of Tesla Incorporated's biggest utility-scale batteries in Australia as the facility was preparing to begin operations. The fire occurred within one of the Tesla megapacks at the Victorian Big Battery during the initial testing between 10 a.m. and 10:15 local time on Friday. Louis de Sambusi, managing director of Neoen Australia, which operates the facility, said in a statement. No one was injured, the site has been evacuated, and companies are working closely with emergency services, according to the statement. So apparently this is a giant field of batteries that looks like it's located inside an even more giant field of wind turbines.
Yep.
So much for the whole green energy thing. I mean, it's not like these electric batteries don't have a habit of like blowing up now and then, It seems a little bit counterproductive here. But, what can you say? I feel sorry for Tesla. This is going to cost them a lot of money, which they're going to pass on to the people who are stupid enough to buy their cars. Speaking of buying cars, I did an interesting survey today for an auto company where I was subjected to 4 ads that purported to be for automobiles. They were actually more along the lines of social engineering and wanting to know if I felt the ad displayed sufficient diversity and sufficient respect and veneration of women. I told them in no uncertain terms that I'm already equal, people. I don't need you pretending to venerate me when you don't. And no, I will not buy an electric vehicle. And no, don't try to sell me anything named Tucson. And don't try to sell me anything associated with Disney Plus. Ain't happening. Daily PSA, Arizona sucks rocks. Yes, Bear.
Has anyone done any analysis on the price of gold related to inflation? Because, I mean, if you just increase it by 7%, which is around the current stated inflation rate, it would go up to like 1900 and something.
I have seen no studies on the issue. The studies I have seen relate specifically to paper gold keeping the real price of gold depressed by as much as 40% at this point.
Okay.
And the same is true. The real price of silver is suspected to be depressed as much as 60% by fake paper trading and other weird financial bullshit that happens,
Okay.
as we all know. So in other news, we have an article here from Money Metals about political hacks.
No.
Concoct excuses for their inflation. So let's see what this week's excuse for inflation is. Jerome Powell, after last week's FOMC meeting, said inflation has run hotter than expected. Oh, really? Well, only if you happen to be a politician. The rest of us knew that was going to be the case. However, he wants to assure Americans that the destruction of their dollar's purchasing power is temporary. Isn't that lovely? It's temporary, people. His diagnosis? Ballooning demand for goods and services when the U.S. economy reopened from COVID shutdowns drove prices higher. Rest easy, folks. Prices will stop surging as soon as demand moderates and supply catches up. Well, there's a couple problems with that. I mean, first of all, supply is not catching up because, as we all know, the supply chain is tottering and on its last legs at this point.
Pretty sick.
Number 2, in terms of buying of durable things that one can keep and actually use, demand is rising. I am seeing more people in the grocery stores that are actually stocking up. In terms of, I'm seeing people again with 2 or 3 bundles of toilet paper in their cart instead of just 1. I'm seeing people who did what I did just this week, grabbing the second to last bottle of laundry detergent on the shelf and the last bottle of toilet bowl cleaner of my favorite type on the shelf, because you never know when you're going to see it again. With more and more random empty spots in the store that stay empty for a week or 2, and then more random empty spots show up, people are wanting to make sure they have their stuff. And that is absolutely understandable here. But back to the article. That's the official line. Yeah, we're all about the official line around here. Americans shouldn't hold their breath. Powell's diagnosis overlooks a couple of other drivers of inflation. Only a couple? They're being nice this week. He's like Anthony Fauci and the other political hacks who have overrun the D.C. Wall Street swamp. They never take responsibility and they always spin. Powell is aware, but failed to mention that the Fed cut interest rates back to 0 in March 2020, and the Fed balance sheet has exploded as the central bank accelerated bond purchases. Yeah, that whole... How does that whole buying back your debt thing and it disappears work? Because if that works, then I could get kind of happy about that, but it doesn't work. Or the moratorium on evictions and foreclosures, which eliminated rent and mortgage expenses for millions of Americans. And that ended on Sunday.
Yep.
And
Today.
that ended, and there's going to be some real problems ahead, because mark my words, people, you can expect that our dear federal government is going to try to pass a law that says you can no longer use someone's rental history as a barrier to renting them an apartment if people actually get thrown out by their landlords. they're going to try to usher in some sort of federalized tenant protection here. Can we say rent control is coming somewhere down the line? I hear the distant hoofbeats of rent control on a federal level here. I'm hoping that the tinfoil hat is being inaccurate in that forecast. But you see, this is the psychic, let's predict what the federal government is going to do, bow right here. And it is saying, oh, methinks they're thinking about federal rent control. To fund this extraordinary largesse, this Treasury sold trillions of dollars of new debt to the Fed, which conjured the dollars to purchase those bonds from thin air. Must be nice to be able to print your own money to buy your own debt to make it go away. Powell knows these benefits were paid for by inflation of the money supply. If supply and demand had anything to do with rising prices, it was because market signals were not allowed to function. Government lockdowns disrupted entire industries. Central planners always concoct some kind of story. Americans are feeling the reduction of their purchasing power. They're poorer, and Powell doesn't want to be blamed. So he's lying about the causes and incredibly wants Americans to trust he has the solution. Standard operating procedure in the swamp. The more people are convinced higher prices are temporary, the less they'll take steps to protect themselves by, for example, acquiring physical precious metals. But a lot of Americans don't believe what they're being told. The flood of buyers into bullion markets over the last 18 months is one indicator of that. They understand inflation is a form of tax which hits the poor and middle class the hardest, and rising prices aren't going to be transitory so long as Congress and the Fed remain unrestrained. This is absolutely true. I have noticed here, as I said, our gas prices have gone up 5 cents a gallon every single week for the last 3 weeks. I expect that trend to continue. I noticed that my can of tuna, which used to weigh 6 ounces and then weighed 5 ounces, now weighs 4 ounces drained. So start watching for stealth inflation, people. This is where the package size stays the same, but the actual amount of food you get is less than it was. I'm seeing also portion inflation in the sense that the family size box of wheat thins is now smaller than the family size box of wheat thins used to be. And by the way, another thing I've noticed that is very interesting and rather odd is of late, there are many times when the loss leaders in the sales circular are actually a higher price than they were a month ago to begin with, but they're also a higher price than a smaller size of the same product that is not on sale. What they're doing is they're claiming that the big peanut butter is a sale and it's a huge bargain. But when you look at the actual unit price, the little itty bitty jars are the ones that have the lowest unit price per ounce. And I find that interesting. I'm going to start watching for that more often because that's a new, interesting twist in the grocery world. I haven't seen the Drudge Report headline about Australia, but Bear is looking at it right now, I believe.
Well, I'm looking for something on Australia. I don't see anything yet.
Yeah, Bear hasn't seen it yet either. What's it about? Well, yeah, it's all deception, truth seeker. That's all federal governments can do. Governments do not get anywhere if they try to tell the truth. Governments don't get anywhere if they try to be effective because, quite frankly, your average human being can't handle the unvarnished truth. And the average human being doesn't like it when a government is effective and it actually works because they're convinced it's not working for them even when it is. Because sometimes there are hard solutions involved. But on the e-waste recycling thing, I found an interesting article that I just thought I'd bring to your attention since I am not watching the Olympics, of course. Why in the world would anybody watch the Olympics? It's just ridiculous. So, how much gold and silver is actually in Tokyo 2020 Olympic medals? Anybody got a guess here?
No.
That beautiful big gold medal. Well, it's no longer a secret that the Olympic gold medals don't actually contain a lot of the gold. But how much gold do they have, and what about the silver and bronze medals? The gold medal. Only 1.2% of the Tokyo 2020 Olympic gold medal is actually gold. The other 98.8% is silver. So at least it's worth something, okay? The silver medal is the only one that truly lives up to its name. It has the same weight as the gold and is made from 100% actual silver. Robert, only 1.2% of that gold medal is gold. The silver medal is all silver, so I want to win a silver medal. Okay, I'm going to win a silver medal in the tinfoil hat Olympics. The bronze medal is lighter and is made of 95% copper and 5% zinc. So I take it bronze is an alloy of copper and zinc, Bear?
Copper and tin.
Well, apparently their bronze medal is an alloy of copper and zinc. Just so you know.
Be brass.
So it's so the bronze medal is actually brass.
Yeah.
That's bad. It's even more interesting how Japan got the needed medals to make approximately 5,000 medals that are currently being handed out. As part of the Tokyo 2020 medal project, Japan collected approximately 78,985 tons of used small electronic devices. Out of those, 6.21 million were used mobile phones. These were collected all across Japan from April 2017 to the end of March 2019. Japan managed to collect 32 kilograms of gold, 3,500 kilograms of silver, and 2,200 kilograms of bronze from about 79,000 tons of dead cell phones. Every single medal to be awarded to athletes during the Tokyo 2020 Games is made from recycled metals. We're grateful for everyone's cooperation on this project. We hope our project of recycling small computer electronics and our efforts to contribute to an environmentally friendly and sustainable society will form part of the legacy of the Tokyo 2020 Games. Tokyo 2020 medal designer Junichi Kawanishi said he specifically gave the medals a polished look in order to achieve a warm glow. With their shining rings, I hope the medals will be seen as paying tribute to the athletes' efforts, reflecting their glory and symbolizing our friendship. Blah, blah. But I just thought that was rather interesting because I have to say that having spent some time ripping apart things, and it really is fun. Everybody should do this. If I had a source for e-waste up here, I would be happy as a clam. I can see a good use for this. I really can. I don't like their woke rah-rah nonsense about it, but I think it makes an interesting statement, and I think that it sets these particular medals that these athletes are winning apart from old medals in the past. I like the fact that Japan decided to do something unique when they made their gold, silver, and bronze medals. I mean, it's cool. Now, I can think of plenty of other things they probably could have melted down to make those medals that would have been equally cool. But it's just nice to see somebody taking some sort of innovation going on here. Okay? I mean, it's just interesting. And from Zero Hedge, we have the latest doomsday report on Social Security. And they're right, by the way.
But I'm on Social Security.
Social Security's insolvency is bigger than climate change and COVID-19 combined.
No!
In the year 1348, after more than a decade war with France, King Edward III of England noticed many knights who returned home from the front lines had become completely impoverished. Wow. I mean, let me see if I've got this straight. It's expensive to be a knight. It's even more expensive to be a knight if you're off fighting a war and not at home making money on your farm or whatever. Okay? The war had taken a massive financial toll on Edward's men. Some had been captured in battle and forced to sell all their property in order to ransom themselves. Others had become grievously wounded, and their permanent disabilities prevented them from earning a living. So no jousting, which kind of sucks. So the king created a special foundation to care for some of these men who became known as the poor knights. Those who were admitted into the foundation received an annual pension of 40 shillings, worth roughly $3,000 in today's money. So let's do the math here. 40 shillings becomes $3,000 in about 700 years. That's really not a bad inflation rate. Plus, free room and board at the College of St. George. Wow! It was a nice idea, but naturally it didn't take long for Edward's pension fund to become mismanaged. The pension fund was in such dire financial straits it was typically only able to provide for 3 poor nights at a time. Eventually, and I'm talking hundreds of years later, the pension was ultimately restructured and bailed out by Henry VIII and later by his daughter, Queen Elizabeth I. Financial mismanagement and bailouts have been a common fate of pension funds throughout history. Emperor Augustus of the Roman Empire established a retirement fund for his legionnaires called the Aeraria Militare, but subsequent emperors couldn't resist dipping into the fund to pay for their lavish lifestyles and pet projects, so the Aerarium ultimately went bust. Today, pension funds around the world are in a similar position, and it's not a controversial statement. Even the OECD acknowledges the world's funding gap of public and private pensions runs into the tens of trillions with a T dollars. To put this figure in context, the United Nations projects the adaptation costs of climate change will run approximately $10 trillion over the next 30 years. I wonder what adaptation costs they're talking about. Might have something to do with all that nasty stuff they have on their website and the Great Reset. Furthermore, the Institute of International Finance estimates COVID-19 has cost the world a whopping $24 trillion. Now that I absolutely believe. I think that might be a fairly accurate figure, if not a little bit on the low side. And yet, according to the U.S. government's own financial report, the long-term unfunded pension liability just for Social Security is $55.9 trillion with a T.
Does that mean it's
more than the cost of climate change and COVID-19 combined? Wow, I just hope Bear gets all his before he croaks. I bring up the examples of COVID and climate change because they're two of the most vocalized issues in the world right now. Everyone is screaming about masks, vaccine, and the environment. Yet hardly a word is uttered anymore about the pension crisis, even though, at least from an economic perspective, it completely dwarfs the other issues and it's getting worse. Inflation is an enormous problem for Social Security. Even before the pandemic, Social Security's key trust fund was projected to run out of money by the early 2030s. But last year's COVID lockdowns meant millions few people were employed and paying into the system, a lot less revenue for the program. And now with inflation surging, Social Security has to make cost of living adjustments and increase the monthly benefits to its tens of millions of recipients.
Yay!
These are pretty much the worst possible conditions for the long-term health of Social Security, and it means the trust fund will likely run out of money even sooner than projected.
No.
It's ironic that last year the Social Security administrators actually reduced their long-term inflation forecast. In other words, the trust fund's projections are based on certain macroeconomic assumptions, and the administrators assumed the inflation rate would be 2.4%. That is the magic number that they're always hovering around, is right between 2 and 2.5%. Very interesting there. I wonder why. Actual inflation is now 5.4%, according to the Labor Department. Real inflation is actually running closer to 11 or 12%, but we're not going to quibble with that. And the long-term rate of inflation over the last 50 years has averaged 3.9%. Here's another one. Social Security assumes that the real interest rate on its investment, the amount it earns after inflation, will be 2.3%. Yeah, right. The actual real rate of returning now, the actual rate they're earning now, is minus 3.9%, and the rate has been negative for years. Now, I don't know about all of you, but if I had all of my eggs in an investment basket and my investment fund manager told me I was losing 3.9% a year, I'd be hunting for new investments. But that's just me. So some of the most critical assumptions that drive Social Security's long-term projections are completely wrong, meaning the reality is probably worse than even they believe it to believe. Yeah, definitely worse. And remember, they were already projecting the primary trust fund would run out of money in the early 2030s, just over a decade away. There's an even more long-term problem with Social Security, though. The birth rate of the United States has been in a steady decline since the late 1980s, and for the last several years, it has continued to hit fresh record lows. This isn't so much a problem now, but it creates enormous problems 20 to 30 years from now. A low birth rate means there aren't enough people being born who decades from now will be in the workforce paying into the system. Social Security needs a steady growing workforce with an average of 3 workers paying into the system to support 1 retiree receiving benefits. This is known as the worker to retiree ratio, and Social Security tracks this very closely. 3 to 1 is break even. It's been well below that level for years and continuing to trend lower due to America's declining birth rate. That doesn't even take into consideration all the millions of jobs that will be lost in the coming decades due to automation, AI, and robotics. The conclusions here are pretty obvious. The problem is objectively enormous. Yeah,
It's objectively insoluble.
Public pensions around the world, from the U.S. to Europe to Japan, are in deep financial trouble, and even private pensions are underfunded. The financial size of the problem completely dwarfs other major issues of the day. Yes, it does. Tax hikes are inevitable, especially in the U.S. The U.S. right now is trying to model itself on the European welfare state. Well, payroll taxes, which fund public pensions in places like France, Austria, Germany, etc., are double what they are in the U.S. I think our team is actually shooting to get to a tax rate that's 2.5 times the EU. So they can take that 0.5% and play with it, So absolutely expect payroll taxes in the land of the free to increase dramatically. You have to take matters into your own hands. Zero hedge has spoken. The government isn't going to fix this. They're going to continue to ignore the problem and make false promises because that's the politically expedient thing to do. There are plenty of solutions, but the bottom line is you have to set aside more money for personal retirement. Your money in your hands and your control. Use the tools at your disposal. Consider setting up, for example, a more robust, tax-efficient retirement structure for qualifying income, like a solo 401k. This allows you to set aside more than $60,000 a year if you're over the age of 50. Plus, you'll have more choices in the types of investments and speculations you can make: real estate, cryptocurrency, royalties, and more. No matter the structure, there's hardly any downside in making sure you have more money set aside for your retirement. On another note, we think gold could double and silver could easily increase up to 5 times in the next 2 years. So yeah, that's what Zero Hedge had to say today. And I happen to agree with them because I've known for a long time that Social Security is an unmitigated Ponzi scheme. If any actual person tried to float a Social Security modeled program, they'd be in jail. As a matter of fact, Bernie Madoff, who recently died, may he rest in not so much peace, was basically in jail for the same thing. I mean, let's face it, Social Security is a Ponzi scheme, which is why nobody should pay attention to it. And yes, I told him he had to sign up as soon as he was qualified because I want at least one of us to get our money out of that system before it goes away.
Or at least some of it.
Or at least some of it.
Hopefully I don't get my money out. Hopefully I live longer than that.
Yeah, that would be nice even if it goes away. But that's the news in that department. In other news this week, I have been playing with micro earning sites. For anybody who hasn't discovered these little buggers yet, sites like MyPoints and Swag Bucks, where you can watch videos and answer surveys and play games and get paid for playing games on your phone, which is what I was doing before I got on here.
Here's the Oxio.
And sites like Checkout 51 and Shopkick and Receipt Pal, where you just scan your receipts and you get points for them. Now, a lot of people think this is a pretty silly hobby. I kind of went hard at it. I decided to get hard at it again about 2 weeks ago. And when I started in getting hard at it, between all my little sites, I had about $35 saved up. I've already cashed out, as of this morning, $78. Plus, I still have about $60 floating around out there just in the last 2 weeks. So, yes, programs like Get Upside, programs like Shopkick, while they still exist, etc., are worth putting on your phone because they actually work. As a matter of fact, I've already racked up about $15 in Shopkick in 3 shopping trips. So all I have to do is scan things. I don't even have to buy anything. They have certain things they want to scan because I'm pretty sure they sell that information to the distributors, like the magazine companies, to see whether products are in inventory and where they are in inventory. Because like some products are simply not available in Helena, Montana. And I let them know those products are simply not available at this store in Helena, Montana. That lets the manufacturer know, hey, I need to get into that store, or hey, my product is supposed to be on the shelves and it isn't, so maybe I need to press them to order more. Other things. I mean, I'm sure they're making about 50 times more off that data than they're paying me to give them that data. But I don't care. It's fun. It's a scavenger hunt. I walk into Walmart and they tell me, yeah, here's a list of a whole bunch of items. I can run around the store and get my steps in and get my exercise in the air conditioning, just scanning products. And then if I buy something, I bought a couple of things this week, and in both cases, the points I got back made the item basically cost $1 or less. So I get to try a couple of new things, and I'm like, cool. This is really cool. And I did a really interesting survey on staplers the other day. I wasn't aware there were so many different types of staplers, but I'm happy that they exist. We also went to the state fair, the county fair actually, and I saw a $40,000 automated computerized quilting machine. This bugger will mount a king-size quilt. You put your quilt together, you mount it on the rollers, you run the basting stitch up the sides so that all the layers will stay together where you want them, and then you can set incredible quilting patterns. They've got flowers and Greek keys and all kinds of quilting patterns, or you can freehand it and just set the machine, push the button, and walk away. And next thing you know, those big cones of quilting thread are empty, and you have a beautiful king-size quilt. $40,000. I was like, wow. Of course, the Jeep that was there was even more expensive. I didn't even dare ask, but.
Well, Jeff, I think it's not the vax. I think it's COVID itself is getting rid of the retirees. That helps the formula.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, I don't.
Careful.
I am very much a fan of practical, useful, tested, effective vaccines. I don't see as practical a vaccine for something that has a 99% recovery rate. I don't see a vaccine that is useful when plenty of people are continuing to catch the illness, as in, like with measles, 1 in 200 people that had their measles vaccines will catch measles. I was one of them, as a matter of fact, when I was a kid. But when 40, 50, 60, 70 people out of every 100 that get a vaccine then go on and catch the illness, which the flu vaccine, I don't bother taking the flu shot because about 50% of people will still catch the flu, and I was one of them. As a matter of fact, I got double pneumonia from it. So I don't see it as useful. I don't consider a vaccine tested until it has been in use at least 10 or 15 years. Because some of these vaccines, the side effects don't start popping up until 4, 5, 6, 8 years down the road. So I don't see the point in any vaccine, regardless of the illness, if the illness is vastly survivable by 99.9% of people, if the vaccine does not prevent transmission and does not prevent catching the illness, it just makes, the illness turn into sniffles while you shed virus everywhere. And it hasn't been tested for 5, 10, 15 years. Look at how many drugs we have in general that were on the market 5 or 6 or 7 years before they got pulled because they were killing people, or like in the case of thalidomide, caused irreversible birth defects. Not just in terms of the fused together hands and feet and such, but in terms of impacting the reproductive health of female fetuses that were exposed to
Well,
it.
we should probably cut
So,
the vaccine talk here. We want to keep our
But anyway, I have been playing around with the micro earnings programs again, and I am happy as a clam. I'm going on scavenger hunts and getting my steps in every day, scanning things and racking up the points playing my games. And this time the points are actually turning into money. Now, I will say I don't find the games all that interesting. They're not the kind of games I would normally play. But if somebody is going to give me points, if I can rack up $2 or $3 worth of points a day playing games on my phone, oh well, money is money. And we turn it into Amazon gift cards. It goes on the Amazon account. And when he buys things for the mining on the Amazon account and gets reimbursed, it becomes cash, and the cash promptly disappears. That's the best thing about cash, is it can disappear. I had that discussion with somebody the other day because they were like, why do you keep an all cash economy? And I said, well, first of all, because I firmly believe that part of the motivation for pushing digital cash and credit and even, alternate currencies, like the government talking about a Fed coin for cryptocurrency, is, first of all, when the money isn't in your hand, it's not as real. So it encourages bad spending. It encourages instant gratification because you can just slap it on a card and, yay, I have my bright new shiny thing, and it's only going to cost me $3.87 a month added to the price of the card for the next 30 years, But more than that, it's a way of stealing our privacy because, believe me, as someone who uses these apps and as someone who has analyzed information and algorithms and analyzed psychographic segmentation, which is something everybody should look up, for over a decade now, you would be astonished at how much they can discern about your personality and your life based just on the purchases you make or you don't make. Your purchasing records are every bit as much an indication of who you are, your value system, the things you support, the things you don't support, as your social media posts or anything else. All these useful bits of classified information are handed to these companies willingly every time you use your grocery reward card, every time you use one of these apps, every time you use your credit card. That tells them more about you. They probably know all of us better than we know ourselves, as in, how would these people react in this situation? And, of course, the obvious point, that digital money is tracked everywhere. It can always be taxed. They're talking about bringing it to the point of, when we move to the Fed coin, they'll be able to automatically take your taxes out of your bank account immediately, instantaneously. So, you'll never have to file a return. Well, if there's no returns involved, they can just arbitrarily decide that you owe a hell of a lot more than you do. Or how many people will keep track of what their current income tax status is? I mean, they could decide to double the tax rate and not tell anybody, because that's just the kind of people they are. And it also makes your money subject to confiscation. If my money is not in my hand and under my control, then it's not my money. If it's sitting in that bank account down the street, then the feds can come along tomorrow and garnish it for some random reason, and poof, it's gone. If it's all in a cryptocurrency somewhere and the internet goes down, poof, it's gone. I can't spend it. So this is just something that more and more people, I think, are finally beginning to realize, but young people don't think it's a bad thing. They think it's a great thing. They can't figure out why you'd want to use cash when you can just use a card. These are the same young people that are on poverty forums and simple living forums and frugality forums and saying, why am I always broke? Well, you're always broke because you are not in control of your money. There's no reason to budget if you have credit cards and all your cash is electronic. If all your cash is sitting in a pile on your kitchen table, and that is the only cash you have, and there is no credit card backing you up, and when that cash is gone, it's gone, then you sure as heck are going to be spending it more appropriately. You'll also be spending it privately. You will not be seeding the world with useful bits of classified information about what kind of a person you are. So anyway, that's my rant on money for this week. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me that it's been happening. Yeah, Robert, I have noticed that a lot of places do make it less and less convenient to use cash. And yes, Zioxio, the feds do love seizing cash if they ever find more than a certain amount. Civil asset forfeiture is about as unconstitutional and illegal as you can get, as far as I'm concerned. It is flat out theft. But they have to know you actually have it. So, Robert, I avoid the problem of the TSA line quite simply. I have flown, I think, 2 times since 2001. 2. I don't fly. I'm not going to surrender my Fourth Amendment rights and stand in a line in my freaking socks like some sort of a convict. I'm just waiting for them to come along and use a cattle prod to move the line or stick a UPC code on my arm or something, I don't tolerate that indignity. The last time I flew was for medical reasons. I didn't want to fly. I don't fly. It's quite simple. And yeah, when you need a wheelbarrow of cash to buy a cheeseburger, well, it's still digital money the same way, Yeah, Zioxio, they can say whatever they want. And that is also an avoidance of the fact. The cash isn't a person. But the person is being stolen from definitely has constitutional protections.
No person shall be deprived of property.
Life, liberty, or property, and cash is property.
Yep, that's right. Yep.
Yeah. And that is true also. Cash can't commit a crime.
Yep.
But the thing is, even the Constitution says that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process. Now, this is the problem here with civil forfeiture. The due process that is in place says we don't have to have a hearing. We don't have to accuse you of anything. We don't have to find you guilty of anything, and we can keep your stuff. That is the due process in place, and it is unconstitutional at its base. It simply is. It violates multiple amendments. So the whole thing should have been thrown out a long time ago by the Supreme Court, but we may have noticed that as far as SCOTUS is concerned, if they don't want to hear something, it doesn't matter. Yep. That was a nice step, Zioxio. It happened out there in California. I think they reversed about $45 million worth of claims when they got through 2 rounds of it. It'll probably get overturned by the Fifth Circus because the Fifth Circus is always doing that. But anyway, I'm going to let you guys go so I can get back to earning my pennies, playing my games. But I will say this. Most of the games that they actually pay you to play are not the kind I'd play. They're, they're fun. They're okay. But still. I have a few ideas on games. Later.
Oh. Wolfman says thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Anyhow, what, 20 people here? Some of you are no doubt new since it's 2.5 hours into the thing now. Hi, Joxio. How's it going? Yeah, she gets paid to play games. Not much.
Hey, I rack up a couple of dollars a day.
Couple dollars a day, she says. She gets paid to run around grocery stores and take pictures of UPC codes, or UPC? I don't know, barcodes and stuff. You started hydrology field camp. Well, where is the field camp? Robert says thanks. And David Villa says game on. Terry Curry says great. Smoking says thanks. Wolfman says thanks. You only get paid to lick rocks. Well, you're not supposed to lick rocks, okay? You know, dearie me. So anyhow, quick recap of some of the stuff. Okay. Got results back from sampling at Montana B. For confidentiality reasons, I don't have numbers. Here's the 3 declines. HG stands for high-grade ore, LG stands for low-grade ore, and M stands for marginal. All of it has better than 1/10 of an ounce to the ton. I don't think well, there's like 2 samples there that have less than 1/10 of an ounce to the ton. But because of the high cost of micro-scale underground mining, it has to be high-grade or low-grade surrounded by high-grade to make it worthwhile to move. Anyhow, so that's what we got there. Yeah, I know, Zeoxio. It can just be dangerous at times. You got to make sure which rocks you're licking. And for those in the leaching thing, the center curve is the information we got today. This is time down here, percent recovery over here. And the main difference between all those 3 is the grind size. The finer you grind it, the faster it dissolves. And you can see at the 20 mesh lower curve there, it looks like it's going to peak somewhere around 75% or something, and that's not very good. The others, I think they both would peak over 90, but one's already at 90% in 24 hours, so it might well get over 95%. So finer grind, better recovery, keep the pH in the 10 to 10.5 range. And what we're using right now is 5 pounds of GeoGold-X per ton of ore. And that's adequate. I don't know how much excess we're using. I just got the titration chemicals in today. Hopefully by the end of the week, I can actually test the samples after I've run them and see how much has been consumed. But that's our situation there. And Yukon Cornelius. I have no idea who he is. I don't recall ever hearing that word before. So anyhow, that's the results. We have a power supply coming in on Friday, titanium mesh on Monday.
Electro winning shall occur.
And well, I've got an auto burette, but that's basically it's an auto fill burette. It's kind of cool, but I would not call it an auto titration machine. Oh, okay. I'm still not sure who Yukon Cornelius is, but I presume that was an actual character someplace at one time, but I don't know. Anyhow, so we should be getting a electro winning cell set up this week. I'm trying to get a tailings containment facility built out there so I can do cement mixer size batches, and then we'll really start getting some stuff happening. Actually, it's not bad. It's about $7.50 a square foot. Oh, okay. Already got one on the way, Robert. But if we need some more, I'll try and remember that. So theoretically, we should be plating gold by next week. We should be running somewhere between 25 and 50 pounds a batch. We'll see once I go out there and measure the volume of the cement mixer. That's where the calculations of the slurry density that I did this week are important. And so the things keep moving pretty quickly. This next couple of weeks is going to be mainly working on the leaching process and getting into cement mixer size batches of it. Yeah, the mesh, it's actually expanded metal, so it's pretty simple. It's actually 1 millimeter expanded metal. So that's what it is. Who's going to work the mines and do the heavy lifting? At this point, do not know. Yes, we'll see how much gets done this season, and whether I'm going to need help or not. My guess is we come to a certain point, I will need help, and then we'll worry about it then. Right now, at least for the next couple of weeks, I don't. If everything goes smoothly, then after that, I might. But we shall see how things go and how much we're getting. Because let's see, at only 25 pounds a batch.
So that's 80 batches in the
20. 2,000 divide by 25, no multiply, is 80. So
That's what I
1 divided by 80. So each cement mixer is only going to theoretically recover about $20 in gold. So that would be, yeah, it's about a number 10 mesh, about 1/8 inch expanded metal. You know, the holes. So we're looking at not being able to make a profit at the cement mixer size. We're going to have to scale up significantly past that. We'll probably be in the 1 ton per day range before we actually start turning a profit, and that would take like at least 3 people. It would be nice to get there by the end of this season. We do have we have a big jaw crusher and a big impact mill. The tankage and stuff, I have some interesting ideas that may or may not work. We'll see, and go from there. But it's an interesting situation, you know. I'm having a good time and learning a lot, getting this all, figured out. We'll also be making a series of videos on leaching in general, like I did that first one on, was it Basic Leaching 1? Leaching Basics 1. Hey, Ethan, how's it going? Any particular questions? Have I brought you up to speed? Eva and I have been going out, Saturdays to the mine and coming back Sundays. There's some things we can do out there, some useful stuff, but primarily Eva likes to get out of town and go camping 1 night a week. She finds it very calming and relaxing. And during the week, we're on call during the day in case there's a cancellation at the specialists. If they call up, we need to be able to roll right away because Missoula is like 2 hours from here. So that's everything's kind of revolving around Eva right now, although a lot of stuff is getting done in terms of the mining and the milling. So really happy with the progress we're making. And, in a couple of weeks, we might be even to the point where we're going to need to start hauling some more ore to the mine. We're going to have to get a better way of add the agitation tank leaching and stuff than just a single cement mixer. There are possibilities, but we shall see what we shall see, and go from there. Anyone got a used cement truck over by Helena, Montana that's sitting around not doing anything but still runs?
I'm sure it's Calpon, right?
Yeah. But anyhow, any questions at this point? Kind of brought you up to speed as to what I'm doing and where I'm going in the immediate future here. Do we have any questions to drive conversation? Somebody asked me on one of the videos this week, about the solution concentrations and costs and such. It's like, it's too early to tell. We got to get into, instead of laboratory scale testing, cement mixer would probably do 5 tons at a whack. So that might, that would get us at least in the next season, no problem. But we shall see. I'm not sure what size, like a commercial scale tow around cement mixer has or not. I'm just getting started on that, so we'll see how the numbers crunch, and we'll go from there. You can also take barrels and do essentially a bottle roll with barrels too. There's a lot of different possibilities, but let's say for right now, yeah, 18 tons of concrete. We're at a much lower slurry density than concrete, and all I'm caring about is ore. So if you got, let us say, 18 tons of weight, let's just round it to 15, and 1/3 of that is ore, the other 2/3 is solution, then you're looking at that 5 tons I was talking about. Terry, have you got any thoughts on when you're finished with the testing? Well, yeah, we have one, I think it's smaller than 1 horsepower is our cement mixer right now. Making another one certainly could be done. Have you got any thoughts on when you're finished with the testing? No, I never got a centrifuge for the 50 mil tubes. In terms of the testing, probably about another month before I'd be ready to scale up to the next step. Some of it has to do with the fact that, when I do a test and I take the sample to the lab, and it takes them 2 to 4 days to get me a result. And so that, slows things down a bit. I'm not terribly upset. It gives me plenty of time to spend with Eva, and I don't exhaust myself. It's been a bit hot lately, so it's been kind of annoyingly hot. For an Arizona boy, it's not too bad, but nevertheless, 100 degrees is no fun to work outside in hour after hour. Before we get done with this stage of testing is probably in the neighborhood of a month. And at that point, I'm going to be saying I have some ideas on different ways of scaling up the agitation leak. Ethan, today the smoke was almost gone. Wind changed. We got rain around here. Jim was out to the west of us, and they got pummeled by rain. We could see a big thunderstorm to the east of us sitting there for an hour, just pounding it down. And as I say, so the smoke was good today. It was also cool and cloudy today. It was nice. Running out of time for yes, we're not planning on being in full production by this season. Just don't have enough. You are going to electroplate your pregnant solution to precipitate gold. If yes, what keeps the gold from going back into solution? Okay, as long as you keep the electric current engaged, then it cannot go back into solution. It's essentially being held there. And so as soon as you turn off the current, you take the cathode out of the solution, or you drain the solution out of the cell. Yes, if you were to just leave the cell sitting there with the leaching solution still in it and no current, it will redissolve the gold. Yep. Zioxio said Butte had flash floods yesterday.
Wow.
Well, it's good that we're getting some rain. That's for sure. I'm glad we didn't get pounded on when we were camping on Saturday, but it would have been nice to have a little bit cooler. So that's basically on the cell. That's how you keep that from happening, Argonaut. And there's also a possibility you can plate the gold and silver out of solution, out of your leaching solution onto the cathode, then take that cathode, put it in a different electrolytic cell using slightly different conditions, use it as more of a refining cell and getting a better quality of doré out of it that way. There's all kinds of different possibilities. We'll see how it all crunches out. Yeah, Zioxio, I would imagine you would be correct. It depends on what the anode metal is, and which way it's trying to go. According to Chris, some guy came up with a cell that I think used a titanium cathode and a copper anode, and the natural galvanic action, the battery action, it forms essentially a battery, and the battery action would actually cause it to electroplate the gold onto the cathode. Pretty sneaky. I mean, especially in a low-tech environment, that could come in real handy. Back in the hinterlands of Africa there, that might be a useful solution. So say there's just loads and loads of options. It's real fun educational exercise. We try and keep it around 1 ounce to the ton in our projections. That's kind of the ore we're looking for. So that would give us around 9 grand at today's prices. Of course, that would take me 50 hours to crush using the small mill. Using the big mill, the big Stutenroth, we could probably do that in a day. We have to factor in the screening and recirculation. I was thinking on something like that, if you're doing a screening and regrind, a lot of these impact mills have no classification or no useful classification, let me put it that way. What you could do is, if you wet screened it using solution, then you've already started your recovery process while you're still regrinding it. So, you might get a couple hours jump on it. I don't know. We'll have to do some tests. But yeah, I'd say a cement mixer would do a lot of material. Say if you were running that, you could use a I would think that you'd want to do is have a hydraulic drive on the drum and have an external hydraulic pump, so you're not using the main engine, running at idle, things like that. A small diesel, four banger or something, running at 50% power, driving a hydraulic pump would probably be a lot more efficient fuel wise and a lot less wear and tear on the machine. And then just cross connect it to the truck, so that once you get to wherever you're going, you pull off a couple hydraulic lines, swap them out, and it's just a parked plant. And you could theoretically do that. And that would be a pretty good size agitation leach. And you might be able to pick one up fairly cheap. I don't know. Anyone got an idea what a used cement truck that still works costs? I have no clue.
I'd go for a government auction.
I don't know if governments usually use cement trucks that much. They usually have subcontractors. But yeah, if anyone has a good idea what a used cement truck would cost, a hydraulic drive drum. Of course, I don't think they've had chain drive drums for a long time now. So I think it'd be hard to find a chain drive. But say that would work pretty well. And then you could have somewhere in the middle. You could have essentially like a wash plant trommel could do the same. You can just have a tank with some kind of agitation, like a Pachuca tank. Jeff Bybee says, boss bought one for $15 last month. So I'm guessing that's $15,000. It sounds reasonable in a running cement truck, one that's reasonably reliable, not on its last legs. That makes sense. Depends on the cement truck. Some cement trucks use that motor on the back. Some use the main engine driving a hydraulic pump. I had a friend who drove a cement truck for years, and it was all run off the main engine. And there was a PTO shaft to a hydraulic pump, and the hydraulic pump ran a hydraulic motor, which turned the drum. But yeah. But let's say there's other ways of agitating the ore. Let's see, what's 80 cubic feet? We had a 5-foot diameter tank, so pi d would be 3 times 5. So basically the area is about 15 square feet on a 5-foot tank, and 80 divided by 15. So a 5-foot diameter tank, 5 foot high, would have enough volume to hold the slurry for a ton of rock. And that's not too bad. You could probably find a plastic conical bottom tank or a fiberglass conical bottom tank somewhere, like a Tractor Supply, for $1,000, $1,500 new. That might work. Then you'd need to have some kind of a circulation system. You could use a Pachuca tank with an airlift in it. You could put some kind of a stir on it. There's all kinds of possibilities. One I was thinking is you could just put an auger in a tube in the center, so the auger is constantly just pulling up the material. All kinds of ways you could do it. I don't know. Good night, David. I don't know how much it's a little cement mixer. It's obviously a small homeowner size. The boss had it. Probably picked it up free somewhere. He's very good at that stuff. And the switch was bad, and the motor mount was kind of funky. So I had to fix the motor mount and put the belt back on and replace the switch. I'm guessing it'll probably hold about 25 pounds of rock. Don't know. One nice thing is the drum is very clean, so it will be easy to, you're not going to have a lot of other contaminants in there to mess you up. So I'm going from about half-pound batches to roughly 25-pound batches. It may be more than that. I don't know. When I go out there, I'll take the cement mixer, put water in it, and run it, and see how much water I can put in it and have it run reasonably well. And then that'll give me the volume. From the volume, using the slurry density calculations like I showed this week, that allows me to figure out the actual charge. And fairly simple calculation there. And then I can actually start running those. But I also need someplace to put the stuff once I agitation leach it. And because we have solar power out there, I'm going to put a timer on it so it'll only run like 8 hours a day. And then just sit the rest of the time, or maybe, run 10 minutes and shut off once an hour, something like that. See what happens. See what the most effective leaching for the least amount of power consumption will be. Another reason why it's going to take me a while. So that's the basic next step up. I mean, that's a 50-fold increase in size. That's a pretty good step up. I mean, if I was to do that from 25 pounds, yeah, that'd be 1,250 pounds a day, or 1,250 pounds a batch, half a ton a batch. That'd be pretty significant. So we'll see. I really don't know exactly, and I'm not just trying to be stupid here. It's because everything's ore dependent. You really have to test this stuff. It's like, how big an engine are you going to need for that car, to run at 100 miles an hour? Well, if you know enough about the cars, you can say, well, yeah, that 400 V8 will do just fine. If you don't, you got to try a couple cars out and see what happens. That's basically where we're at, because every ore is so unique. I mean, just for example, the difference between the Pack Rat Penthouse and the dump. Now, some of it has to do, good Lord, some of it has to do with grind size too. But see this data point here that's below the curve? That was with no lime. This is the same thing, Pack Rat Penthouse, with no lime. That's a finer grind, but we have a normal curve here. It's still dissolving stuff pretty actively out to 24 hours. This between 8 and 24 hours, it's still gained. Well, let's see, what's the 8? Yeah, it probably gained 6% recovery in that 16 hours there. Or no, that's 12 hours. 6% recovery in 12 hours. So you just got to try things and see how they work. All of those are at lower concentrations than your manufacturer's recommendation. I mean, in terms of lower pH. At the high pH that he recommended, the recoveries were worse. Good night, David.
Good night, David.
So, that's where we're looking at here. And of course, you guys get to watch over my shoulder, no problem. And I'll try and use the new format where I put formulas on screen so you can just pause the video and take all the time you need to evaluate what I've written there. Argonaut, no. At this point in time, we not only have a big impact mill, which it's a good production mill too. Wear parts are quick to change out. It's a lot more portable than a ball mill. There's no inherent reason a ball mill wouldn't work just fine, because it's not only crushing the rock, but it's also, you'd fill it with solution. you'd be dissolving the gold while you're beating the rock up. So that would be a perfectly feasible thing to do with this particular rock. Many other rocks, no. Ball mills, though, tend to be expensive. And where's those magazines, little one?
Up there.
Up there? Because, let's see, we have an ad in the back here for Mount Baker. And trying to remember, because they sell ball mills. And well, here's a 2x4 ball mill with a half a ton extra balls, $19,000. And the 2-ton an hour Stutenroth mill, I think runs around 5 or 6, but it's been a while. Trying to find the Mount Baker. It seemed to me that a ball mill would be like $20,000 for what we needed. Services, properties.
Well, they quoted a price for their complete plan.
Yeah, they had a complete plant. It was like $70,000 with the hammer mill. Yeah, Mount Baker, there it is. Yeah, the 1 ton per hour turnkey ore processor ready to run, $99,000. Their mini gold plant is $16,000. This particular ad doesn't have their ball mills in it. I know I saw it, so it must be this one here. Let's see. California Mining Journal is pretty useful here. Shaker table, jaw crusher, hammer mill. 1 ton per hour ball mill, $31,000. 3 by 6 foot, complete with everything. My guessing it's like 5 tons or more. Not portable, pretty expensive, highly efficient in the long run. We're going to use a jaw crusher. Again, he's got a big jaw crusher, like a 10 by 16. It'll crush down about 1/2 inch minus. If we're doing small quantities, we'll just use the RC46, pull the rolls apart so not putting wear on them, and just use the jaw. And that's a 4x6 jaw crusher, and it'll run 500 pounds an hour. Correct, Jeff. With just the small cement mixer, we'd be getting about $22 a batch, which, of course, is not profitable. However, when you figure your labor cost, maybe even your electricity cost. But in terms of the chemical cost, yeah, it's profitable. But this is where we're trying to figure out all our parameters. And from those parameters, we can do the calculations for larger scale. There's a reason they say, economy of scale. That's why. As it gets bigger, things get better. Yeah, and that's from that. It's a small homeowner cement mixer, too. It's about as small as I've ever seen. We're not even worried about that right now, smoking. I'm glad you're happy, Argonaut. I say it's fun learning myself, and I'm having a good time doing it. I also like building stuff and solving problems. So this is what I like to do. It's fun. I wish we had a nice, big, rich vein to attack that we could see right there. We do have some decent ore, visible. I mean, accessible. And we may have more pretty easy to get to, but, we can't tell until you get to it. That's the problem with when you're not drilling ahead of yourself there. You can't see it until you dig it. So that's our basic problem. But once we have the mill, the technology, all the equipment and the expertise, even if this particular project doesn't work in terms of profitability, especially paying back all the initial capital costs and learning curve and everything, then we'll have a tool that can be applied to someplace else. And with all you guys out there and everything, I'm sure we can find someplace else to apply to. There's lots of mines up here. There was one we were at last summer, and there was a dump, looked like about 1,000 tons. The sample we took ran an ounce to the ton. Yeah, that would work, smoking. That's it. You could basically do that. He took a cement mixer out on the firing range and just was putting water and dirt in it until it filled up with lead. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. That would work because you got big chunks of high density lead there. It'll push other stuff out pretty easily. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, that would work fine. Yep, not a problem. Yeah, that I think it is an old Harbor Freight one. I'm not sure. Again, it's something that he had. If it turns out to work really well, but it's just too small, I'm sure we can do something bigger. We'll scale up fairly quickly if that's the case, but we'll just have to see. I mean, I could be crushing 100 pounds an hour, and if that was only agitating for 6 hours before you dumped it, I mean, I'd only be going at 24 times the rate that the extraction was going. Can you spot the bottleneck here? I mean, that's one of the things that you often do in a situation like this is you unplug bottlenecks. Okay, we got a jaw crusher that can do 500 pounds an hour. We got an impact mill that can do, depending upon which one we use. Let's say we're using my small one, 150 pounds an hour. And then we've got a, agitation tank, cement mixer, that does 25 pounds every, I'll call it 5 pounds an hour. Well, I'll say it doesn't take a genius to figure out what's slowing you down here. So the first thing you do is you go with a bigger agitation tank. Now you're running at 150 pounds an hour. Let's say you work 8 hours a day, 150 pounds times 8. So that's 1,200 pounds a day right there. So divided by 1,200, 60. Yeah, 0.6 times. See, at that point there, we're looking at about $1,000 a day. I'm building the tailings containment area. Should be easily able to hand that for quite a while. And, then the next thing would be to go to the bigger impact mill, again, which we already have. And if you're, one thing you can do to speed up that small jaw crusher I have is to screen it first. Screen it to 1/2-inch mesh. That'll feed the mill. You don't need to jaw crush that. That gives you more throughput. So for 2 seconds. Made about 3-foot table with varying luck. Cutting grooves isn't easy. Yeah. Yeah, making a table is a bit of a thing. Yeah, sometimes it's bigger shovels. Say it'd be nice to actually have gold. That was one nice thing about my gravity recovery system in Tucson with Ryan Zora. I actually wound up with gold. I mean, some of those pans I had looked pretty good. And this is all just numbers. I mean, I'm getting numbers back from the assayer, getting numbers back from the laboratory. There's no shiny. It's not nearly as fun. But I mean, another thing we're going to have to do once we get the electrolytic cell working in this now, we got to get a furnace so we can smelt the doré. It's one thing after another, putting it all together from scratch. Yeah, just taking 2 pillow blocks and a shaft and cutting and just welding another piece of shaft to it like that, and then putting another pillow block on the other side. That's what I did for a couple of things, and that gave me a pretty good throw. I think it was 3/4 shaft, gave me what, 1.5 inches a throw. Piece of cake. Yeah, it's the oxio, but it's visible when it comes out the other end. That's not. I've been into mine. I never saw a piece of gold in the rock, but I've held those 20-pound bars. And so, yeah, it'll be nice to actually start producing some gold. I'm sure the boss will like to see little beads and buttons too, that he can start putting together. But I know he's happy with the progress and everything, so there's no problem there. That's kind of my idea, Courage Dog. The idea is to create a system that is efficient enough at a small enough scale that it opens opportunities that previously were not profitable. Thanks, Wolfman. I mean, that's the idea. I'm trying to multiply the knowledge, birth more pieces of knowledge out there or whatever. They don't make that furnace. They just show you the furnace. It's KO wool, rock wool. It's a high temperature insulator that you can buy. And that's all it is. It's kind of like the difference between a fire pit and a barbecue. It's just a fire pit. It works, but it's extraordinarily basic. Jeff Williams did a video a couple years ago on a furnace that looked pretty nice. It was reasonably inexpensive, and the video showed a pretty nice build. You're welcome, Argonaut. Yeah, it's solving puzzles. People play games to, outthink the games. I like to outthink reality. No, it's not very toxic, Zioxio. I actually have the printout here. Come on, let's see. These are all the lab sheets, I think.
I have to get things more organized. I know I printed out the instructions somewhere. Not sure where I put them. They're on the computer. Those are all mine. Come on. Probably going to have to. Probably just print them out again. It was only about 6 pages. But it was mildly toxic. I mean, my guess would be about like cleanser. You know, not much at all. Not as bad as bleach. You know. RP4. Was that that's the Deister table from Global Mining Solutions, I believe, right? Yeah, that would be the RP4. They're pretty good, but I bought mine for 3,000 new, not 4,000 used. I don't know how well an induction furnace works against, first of all, we don't have line power to the places we're working. And secondly of all, I don't know how well it works on flux. You know, you have to heat the flux too. Yeah, it takes a long time to heat up a propane furnace. Yep. Yeah, it's I forget, there's a toxicity scale. I forget what the name of it was, but it's basically between non-toxic and slightly toxic. You know? Yeah, Roberts, that's the one I'm talking about. It looked pretty good. I was pretty impressed. There's a few videos Jeff Williams has done that really impressed me. That was one, the model of the river system where he showed, you know, where the gold would tend to collect and stuff. I thought that was another one that was really good. He's got some pretty good stuff some occasionally. Most of it is more entertainment, but every once in a while he comes through with a gem as far as I'm concerned.
I want more slim.
Gas versus electric. Again, we don't have electricity. We're on solar power one place and don't have anything anywhere else. So gas is for portability and the remote thing, gas is the way to go. Now, Chris suggested we consider a gas versus waste, gas/waste oil furnace, because the waste oil has a higher heat and stuff, and we can get waste oil cheap. So you use the propane to get it to temperature, and then you switch over to forced air and waste oil. But that it's definitely got to be a hydrocarbon fuel. Not effectively, Xioxio, not on a micro scale. Argonaut says, yes, more slim, Eva. 2 kilowatt generator. Again, I'm not that familiar with such things, but I'm not aware of anyone using induction furnaces for smelting. For melting metal or for heating metal, like if you're going to forge it or whatever, yeah, induction really works quick. But when you've got stuff with a bunch of flux and things that are non-conductive, I'm not sure how well that would work. We're not just melting the metal, we're also trying to smelt the metal. Get everything melted and get the flux to actually dissolve the base metals out of the melt. No, Xioxio, it's beyond my pay grade. Sorry. Anyhow, so let's say that's so many things. Every time we complete one step, it's like, oh, buy all the stuff for the next step and put it together too. So I say I've got a real busy summer here to go, and we'll see how it all works. And then of course we got Eva's issues that have to be dealt with. We'll see how that affects the whole schedule. But say next thing is the cement mixer and electrolytic cell. Then it'll be furnace time, although to start with, we can probably just use a oxyacetylene torch for those small quantities that we're probably going to be dealing with initially. So next month or so is going to be really busy. I just got almost nonstop stuff to do. First, you have to have flowing water, Xioxio. There is zero flowing water. Nearest flowing water is a little trickle of a creek 3 miles away that I know of. No, I have not heard of the Gerson method. Juicing and coffee enemas for disease reduction. Now, have you heard of the Gerson method, little one?
Coffee enema?
Juicing and coffee enemas.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
She's heard of it. Yeah, I agree. I'm glad I'm not in Florida. And even though it's kind of warm, it is at like 5,000 feet, which helps some. And it was really frustrating last Saturday because it was sunny, which, I mean, we didn't have enough smoke to really keep the sun down. It was hot, and it was dead calm. Absolutely dead calm. I mean, one of my tricks is you just pour water on you, and the breeze will keep you cool. I learned that, what was it, 1980? In Yuma, when it's 110 degrees outside and you're drilling, the water truck drives by, run out there and get wet. But it doesn't work worth a crap if there's not a breath of breeze. It was ridiculous. Very annoying. So, but it cooled off fairly quickly in the evening. It's not been more than about 90 out there, I don't think.
No.
And it cooled off a little quicker this week than last week. When we're in that camper, it's designed to stay warm. There's not a whole lot of windows and ventilation in the design of it. There's a fan above, but I don't like the efficiency of it. It looks pretty, and it's a crap design in my opinion. But anyhow. The Gerson, let's see, smoking, joking. Xioxio was out digging amethyst 2 weeks ago, and it was raining ash on us. It depends on the weather, but as a general rule, from about the end of April to late November at the lower elevations, higher elevations, it's shorter. The place that we're working, theoretically, the road closes, what was it, December 2nd or something?
Yeah, December 2nd.
I think it's December 2nd to May 15th. It's supposed to be closed. But if you have an in-holding, theoretically, it doesn't matter. And, heat index, say I'm from Arizona. I'm used to working in the heat, drinking lots of water, things like that. Moderating your pace so you just keep working at a nice steady pace, which is what I did. I got a lot done. Zioxio saw 48 inches of snow overnight in September a few years ago, but how long before it melted again, Zioxio? I mean, that's my question.
Did it help?
Because you wouldn't be surprised that was gone in a week. Not anymore, Roberts, because all the people coming in from the left coast and buying it up. Prices are going just skyrocketing. One and a half cubic feet a second. Yeah. In some cases, you could do fine, especially like say if you had a good drop, you put it into a pipe and run it down a couple 100 feet, run a turbine. Wow. Zaxa says that year was wild. It just never stopped snowing. The college in Bozeman had some buildings collapse with snow loads. Well, that's unfortunate. Did the engineers get their heads slapped, huh? Yeah, it was snowing a little bit the week before Memorial Day this year when my daughters came up to visit, but it wasn't building up or anything. Huh. Zach had a friend 4 hour in one of the buildings, 4 hours before it collapsed. Did they have warning or was it just pure luck that there was nobody, or at least your friend wasn't in the building? I mean, were they looking at it going, okay, this is not looking good, let's get everyone out of here, or what? Because, if they see it coming, that's a good thing. If they didn't see it coming, it was just pure luck, huh? Jackson says, there's a reason MSU isn't accredited for their Bachelor of Architecture program. MSU is absolutely incompetent. He said, no warning. It just went. Yeah, it went at 4 a.m. The only thing that kept it from causing fatalities. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it's just pure luck. And it can be the other way, too. There's been a lot of disasters that, if it hadn't been for a little bit of different timing, it would have made a big difference. Like 9/11, if they'd hit I think it was half hour, 45 minutes later, the death toll would have been 5 times that. That Northridge earthquake that happened at 5:30 in the morning, it collapsed freeways, but they only had 70 fatalities. Imagine if the freeways were packed and running at full speed when that thing happened. It'd be crazy. Zioxio cannot say enough bad things about MSU except their awesome chemistry department. Okay.
Their mining department's good.
No, Montana State University, Bozeman.
MSU sucks.
Yeah. Gianforte, I haven't paid a lot of attention. There haven't been a whole lot that's been upsetting me. How about you? Eva says that she's been paying attention. He's been doing pretty good things. Been what I've heard, I've been fairly pleased with. So that's not bad. Yeah, he also stopped the extra COVID payments, the unemployment benefits, because people need to get back to work. I mean, just right up the street here, half a mile, the next gas station up, Conoco, little stickers on the pump, $500 signing bonuses. What the hell when your convenience market is paying a $500 signing bonus to get employees? You got a situation going on. Yeah, well, that would be only if you got the whole drop and no drag losses in the pipe, too. I didn't get MSU to help our research. It was Montana Tech in Butte. And Zioxio helped in terms of introducing me to some people over there at their Center for Advanced Materials Processing, which is essentially extractive metallurgy. And also they have the Montana State Bureau of Mines is over there, and I was getting some literature and met a guy, Robin McCulloch. He was getting some stuff there too, but he used to run the place. So it was really nice. And that's, they're very friendly people. And, I asked them and they go, yeah, we can do those tests. And they gave us a price and blah, blah, blah. The rest is history. Jeff Bybee says, would you believe you can get up to a $1,200 signing bonus at Savers? Wow. And the government thinks things are going well. Well, I can tell them a thing or two. This is not normal. This is not good. It's Eva's hypothesis that a lot of people have been conditioned to be so afraid of COVID that they don't want to go out and work anymore. They're afraid to go out and be around other people. And that might make sense. I don't know. I deal with rocks, not people. People really confuse and annoy me. Rocks are a lot simpler. And quite often easier to convince to do what you want, too. Oh, well, it looks like we're running out of time here. It's 9:45. Made it again all by myself without Jim to help out, the slacker. Hey, Robert. So anyone got any more questions here? We'll have more progress on the leaching and everything next week. They're proposing it on a federal level. They're proposing a $15 minimum wage. Hasn't happened yet. You're welcome, Jeff. Glad to help out. It's kind of fun. Oh. Any other questions? Going once. So I had a good time. Again, Monday here. Glad I could help. Had a good week. He was holding up well mentally, slowly deteriorating physiologically until she can get the proper treatment she needs. And hopefully she'll get it before it gets too much worse. And it'll be effective. Wolfman says, good night, Keith and Eva.
Good night.
And okay, going twice. Anyone got any more questions? Still don't see anything, so going 3 times now. Any more questions? Everyone's just saying goodnight and goodbye and everything. You take care, Zioxio. I'll have to see you sometime.
Good night.
He says, MSU's math department is the worst I've ever seen. Oh, that's horrible.
Well, what do you expect? It's in Boza 40.